I don't know what kind of check this is or how you would... Oh, no! Oh!
Hello? You ask me that what should I ask him when we, push him stuff to push Konstantin on during the conversation.
Okay, what is this? Somebody linked me this yesterday. The Green Party. UK Parliament. The Green Party of England and Wales has 2 seats right now. Okay. Why was I linked this then? What does their shit matter at all? The Green Party and government will implement a fair and humane system of managed immigration, treat all migrants as if they are citizens, give all residents the right to vote, help families be together, dismantle the Home Office, abolish the no recourse to public funds condition, abolish the 10-year route to settlement, stop the profiteering from application fees, stop putting people in prison because of the immigration status, accept the responsibility for the climate emergency and support people. Okay, this sounds retarded. I don't know. Okay, listen, people have linked me this. This is not Donald Trump, okay?
John in Virginia, Republican. Let's hear from you.
Well, this is John Barron, and this is the worst decision you ever have in your life, practically. Jack's going to agree with me, right? But this is a terrible decision. And you have Hakeem Jeffries, he's a dope, and you have Chuck Schumer, who can't cook a cheeseburger. Of course these people are happy. But true Americans will not be happy. And you have the woman earlier, I assume she's a woman, she's a Democrat, but she said she's disgraced. She's devastated.
All right, John. This. We'll go to Chester, who's in Baton Rouge.
It's a good meme, though, but he's way too fast.
Good meme.
Donald Trump would not be this quick anymore. This would be a good impression like 15 years ago.
Some would say he's...
Shut up, bitch. Apparently, the UK has reduced their CO2 emissions. But I heard Konstantin say that they haven't reduced them at all, but apparently they have. If this is the UK, they've come down, they've been cut in half, which I would say is
What is the claim
impressive.
there? He just says they haven't reduced it?
Well, he says that they've tried, he's obsessed with net zero. That's probably going to be a thing I have to dig into a lot, is whatever the net zero means. But he's like, well, they tried for net zero and they didn't even accomplish anything. But I mean, they did. Like, whether you think it's a good or bad idea, like they're at 4.5, is this tons or kilotons or whatever the and they, at their height, they were at like 11.5, whatever, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. So they did bring it down.
Yeah, shit's gone down. I mean, I think most nations have gone down, no? US, Canada,
yeah, but I think it went down even more.
More than average?
Yeah.
Isn't that because everybody wants to be a part of the Paris Climate Accord except the US now? Aren't they still sticking to that?
I don't know.
Which is net zero by 2030?
Post-Brexit UK has not taken back control of immigration. This was in 2021. We have to, in this campaign, make people understand that EU membership and uncontrolled immigration are synonymous with each other, declared UKIP leader Nigel Farage on April 29, 2016. Farage really does seem like your guys' Trump. I thought he was kind of like a meme lord, like with the whole bus and everything, but I didn't realize that he has like as much airtime and is as influential in all these weird alternate party things. Ugh. Oh no, sorry, Boris was the bus, my bad. Wait, Farage wasn't the bus with the we'll lower the Brexit bus. Wait, are you sure?
5 weeks ago, the Brexit Party was a million.
On board the Brexit bus, the inside story of how Farage won the European Parliament. Okay, but the actual bus with the slogan on the side, that was Boris Johnson. Was it really?
Yeah, he's the big bus guy.
Isn't Boris like later?
Boris was the guy who loved trains and shit.
Yeah, I know that. 350
and
million
he was the guy who went around on a
bus. The Vote Leave bus.
Duped by a bus, dude.
Vote Leave Bus UK. Boris was PM that started the Brexit vote. I need to get the timeline on this. When was Cameron the prime minister around Brexit? Boris then was the PM afterwards? Or was
Cameron was the PM during the Brexit vote. Boris came after the vote was done. Cameron left because he threw up the vote and he was like,
I thought the vote was under Cameron and then he left afterwards and then Boris was the next one.
That's correct. That's 100% correct.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's Boris. That's the bus. Okay. Boris
Cameron
was
has
not
the
the
meme
next
of
one.
Literally whistling as he left and was like, that's done with.
British prime ministers. Okay, Cameroon. And then it was Theresa May and then Boris Johnson afterwards. The fuck did May do? Was she the PM when everybody was trying to decide like what the Brexit should look like for this whole bullshit time or whatever? Oh, and then Truss was actually prime minister for 100 days? Okay. Then Sunak, and then Starmer.
Truss didn't last as long as a head of cabbage.
What do you mean by that?
There was literally a website showing a head of cabbage that was rotting versus like Liz Truss in office, and Liz Truss left before the cabbage finished rotting.
Gotcha. Based. Oh wait, no, this is just 50 days. Why is it why is this listed twice? I'm trying to understand. Born 1975. Different monarchies. Oh, I see. Gotcha. Okay. So this is the same 50-day period. But Elizabeth died and then it was Charles III. Okay. Okay. We had David Cameron to Theresa May to Boris Johnson to that, what is it? Liz Truss to Rishi Sunak. And then we have our boy Keir
Our king.
Starmer. Well, I don't know if we actually like him or not, but
Oh, we do.
do we?
Big time.
2010 to 2016, 2016 to 2019. (2019 to 2022). (50 days). 2022 to 2024. Okay. The UK Independence Party reached its peak in mid-2010. And then what? Would it be accurate to say UKIP gave way to the Brexit Party? Oh, is this actually like a reformed from the Brexit Party? Like, did the Brexit Party literally reform into reform, or?
Pretty sure the Brexit Party just became Reform, yeah. It didn't need to be the Brexit Party anymore, it already happened.
So UKIP in 91. I guess it still kind of exists. Right? It still exists as some random party that nobody does anything with. As of 2026. Okay, yeah. Into kind of the Brexit Party. And then in 2021, at the Reform UK Party. Is it common that like these parties will pop up that are just totally new parties that will just take over your parliament? Because it feels like people are talking about like, oh, we're worried about this or that or that. And then I look these parties up and they have like 2 seats when people are talking about them. No? Like everybody's saying no right now, but Reform has like 2 seats. How many of the, I don't even know if any of these are elected or if they're just defects. So why are people worried about Look at polling. So then if this party was to win like 200 seats or something, does that mean that this would be like an exceptional thing? Or like, why was UKIP so influential when it seems like at most they only had 2 defector seats? Why was UKIP and then that, and why was that so influential? Check popular vote. They have first past the post thing. I don't know why you keep saying that. I don't know how that is. Cameron was retarded and put it to a referendum because it influenced conservative backbenchers. I don't know what a backbencher is. UKIP was influential because the Conservative Party had to coast right to attract their voters. Polling. You keep linking polling. I don't understand. So then the worry is that these people will take a substantial amount of the parliament? If the polling is correct right now, Reform can win a majority by themselves. So you're saying that right now, if there was an election, there's a good chance that this party that has basically no members could win hundreds of seats in the parliament. It's Reform versus Labour. So the Tory party is dead, even though oh wait, are they? They are dead. They're dead. Wait, hold on. Okay, the blue one is. Wait. Lord, no, give me the real thing. Okay. Labour is 404. Conservative is 116. Are Liberal Democrats typically? Is this a center right? Oh no. Or yeah, this is a center right party. The Liberal Democrats in the UK. So the Liberal Democrats at 72 and the Conservative Party at 116. So they have almost 200 seats between the two of them. But this Reform UK with 8 seats is threatening to upset both of these. Could have more votes than both. The reason why you keep saying first past the post, I can't. Okay, I have to. How does UK Parliament elections work?
On this one day, every eligible person in the UK can place a vote and be part of electing their local representative to Parliament. Parties and candidates campaign to win votes by visiting constituents door to door, holding debates and publishing manifestos. A bit like a shopping list of what they plan to do if they're voted in. But how does the election work? The UK is divided into 650 constituencies, each of which is represented by one member of Parliament. Voters register for a polling card to make sure they can take part. On election day, polling stations are open from dawn till dusk. And if a voter can't make it along, there are other ways to make sure they can take part. Once every vote has been placed, the ballots are counted to find out which candidate has come out on top in each area. This is called first past the post. The elected MPs enter Parliament to sit in the House of Commons and represent everyone in their constituency. The political party with the most MPs, the majority, is invited by the Queen to form a government. And if there's a hung Parliament where there's no clear winner, then a minority government or a coalition government may be created or a fresh election held. So on this one day, a little piece of paper with your mark plays a big role in deciding who leads.
Okay. I don't understand. So I think the Parliament is like the House of Representatives. Thank you. The bottom part of their Parliament is yes. The Commons political groups. No. It's the Lords and the Commons. Talk about base names. Oh, hold on. I think it just clicked. I'm sorry. The reason why first past the post is a big deal here is because you have so many different parties that you're voting for. The issue is not first past the post. It's that you have first past the post plus there's like 10 or 8 or whatever people on the ballot. So you're splitting hardcore on everything. So if you can pull at 25, 30% or something, then you can theoretically win. Okay. That's spooky. I see. I don't know how I feel about that. Ooh, that's super spooky. That sounds mega retarded, actually. That actually sounds like the most retarded thing ever. So you could theoretically win if you had like, this would be a super extreme example, but you could theoretically have, so my understanding is most parliamentary governments, hold on, let me see if that's true right now. Most parliamentary governments need to form a coalition with other parties in order to form a majority government to actually rule. Because if they don't join with any other parties in a coalition, then the other parties will form a coalition and they'll rule, right? However, so like sometimes, like I think Canada, this just recently happened. If you get a point in these systems where one party wins so many votes, they can win without even having to form a coalition. That's like you're like a big baller shot caller there. But theoretically, there's a world in the United Kingdom where somebody could win like 12% on every single ballot, and that party could win literally every single seat in the Commons if there were like 9 other parties running or something, right? If assuming the vote was split, this would be an extreme example, but you could have like a 12% vote in every single that sounds like the most retarded thing ever. Is there? Never mind. Okay. Damn. Look at Labor's percentage in 2024. Oh, damn. Okay, 33.7% of all the popular vote. And then Conservative is 23.7, and then the Lib Dems were at 12.2. Ooh. Okay. This explains why it's based. I mean, I guess I'm giving an obviously negative part of this. I'm giving the negative view of this. But the positive view would be that it gives much more of a chance maybe to smaller parties or for people to elect somebody in an area where in a traditional two-party system, you would have no shot ever getting elected. You'd have to participate in one of the two major parties, right? So, I mean, I'm giving the negative part, but yeah. Oh, somebody said the vast majority of UK governments are majority governments, though, not coalition governments. Okay.
Referendum on whether Britain should change its voting system to the alternative vote system called AV is now approaching. And I'm worried that in the debate about this, the criterion that seems to me to be the decisive one in choosing a voting system isn't even being mentioned by either side in this debate. But first, why is this issue of what is a better or a worse voting system, why has that come up at all, as opposed to debates about which policies and which politicians are better, which is what political debate is usually about in an advanced democratic political system? Well, it's come up because the existing voting system, which is usually known as first past the post, has a strong tendency to give the two most popular parties a larger proportion of the seats in parliament than the proportion of the votes they get in the country as a whole. And correspondingly, the smaller parties all get a lower proportion of seats than their proportion of the votes. This non-proportional response of the first past the post system is deemed to be unfair and biased by some people. And the point of AV is to reduce this bias, this supposed bias against the smaller parties. But even aside from that, a lot of the debate has involved the two sides talking completely past each other on that issue, what you might call the arithmetic of fairness. The AV side, as I just said, it says, look, the existing system isn't proportional, and so it's biased against the smaller parties. And the proponents of the existing system point to a completely different issue, which is also about arithmetical fairness, namely that the AV system, and actually any system that is any more proportional than first past the post, gives the smaller parties, and especially the third largest party, a disproportionate political power, even though it gives it a more proportionate number of seats. And the reason that happens is that, well, in any system, it's very rare.
It's worsened by the fact that we don't vote separately on local versus general. You vote for your local MP, and the winning MP locally gets a seat in parliament. Wait, what does that mean? Like your local member of parliament is also the governor of your, or is a representative in your area in your local government? I don't know what that means. So like you don't have the same so we have in every single state in the United States, you have a state Congress and then you have the federal Congress, but they're two totally different things. Those candidates are not the same at all. You have local and national government in the UK still. Okay, for this Nene with Wolves who's been spamming like a retarded on my chat over and over again, in all caps, please just get someone on to stream every basic factor. I can't do that because every single time a retarded like you wants to come on and explain everything because you know everything. Every time I've done that in the past, you come on, you start explaining shit, and then 20 minutes later, people are like, this guy's wrong about a billion different things. So as autistic as it is, it's usually easier for me to ask chat, sort through all the baggage, look up a thing, and then eventually form an understanding of it. Because every time one person screams that they have all the facts like you, and they come in, they get like half the shit wrong, okay? And then chat devolves into autism, trying to argue about all the shit, okay? Jesus.
There for one political party to be the favourite party of more than 50% of the electorate. And so any system that reduces this alleged unfairness to the smaller parties will statistically tend to prevent any party from having an overall majority of MPs either. And so it will prevent them from forming a government. And so they will have to form a coalition with other parties, usually the third largest party. And that is what gives the third largest party in particular enormously disproportionate political power. That happens in two ways. The first way is that that party then chooses who is to be the prime minister, because the leader of the third largest party can choose either the largest party or the second largest party to form the government with. And there's nothing in AV or in any other system that will make the leader of that third largest party lean in the same direction as the electorate lent. So the third party leader can choose to put the second party leader into office as prime minister or the leading party. So it's the kingmaker. And that power of the third largest party leads to another disproportionate power that it then has, which is that it can make conditions for whom it will pick to put into government. And through these conditions, it can insert its own policies into government policy, no matter how unpopular those policies are with the electorate. Now, I should say that even the existing system, the first past the post system, does produce hung parliaments and therefore coalition governments every so often, every couple of decades. And so, by this criterion of arithmetical fairness...
Okay. For when it comes to choosing your prime ministers in the United Kingdom, does the prime minister usually always come from the largest party? Or in order to form a coalition government or whatever, do you usually have to make concessions and pick prime ministers from smaller party? Okay, yes. Okay. The prime minister comes from the governing party or the governing coalition? Does it always have to come from, you mean the largest party in the governing coalition, or? We don't have to deal with coalition building often. Okay. Various organizations continually conduct opinion polls to gauge voter and blah, blah, blah. Okay, so Labor has... Oh, this is from 2024. Okay, I can see these. Okay, so according to this, the Reform Party is actually crushing it. Okay, so everybody before who was saying that, like, there's no shot, Reform can't take a lot of seats or whatever... Was that just a lie? That was just wrong? Like, the difference between having, like, 15% on polls versus 30% on polls seems like the difference between you having 1 seat versus, like, 400 seats, right? Okay. Okay, I understand more now. Applying these opinion polls as it stands to an election that's 3 years away is total slop. It never goes this way. It's completely retarded logic. Thank you. Yes, opinions can change, but I understand now why this is the way that it is. Because from a U.S. perspective, looking at you guys having so much conversation about a party that has 2 seats, defected seats, in your parliament sounds retarded. I don't understand that at all. But this I understand more now. Okay. Jesus. The other parties might do a candidate coalition. Lib Dem plus Labor plus Greens might decide on a candidate together so they don't spoil each other's votes, but it's rare. When you decide on a candidate together, does that mean that you withdraw candidates from the ballot in certain districts in order to combine your vote? So, like, theoretically, let's say that this was just a single... I'm assuming that there are, what was it, like 600 or 800 or 600 districts or whatever in the UK. So you could have, like, in one district, you agree to pull 2 or 3 of your people... Okay. Also, quick based break. Marty Supreme has tied the record for most losses for a singular film at the BAFTAs ever. Yeah, fuck this film. What a movie. And fuck this guy in the film, okay? He's a bad person. Okay, why the are so many of you guys... Okay, I don't understand that. We'll figure that out. Okay, we got to get into the bonger mind. That's 9 minutes. Let's take a quick 20-minute detour here. I feel like understanding this guy's history is pretty important, and then we'll see what... if there are things he got wrong or how. This is probably good. Farage guy is probably going to be fairly important to understand, I'm guessing.
And you are listening to LBC. You may also be watching it. I think we've turned on the cameras at lbc.co.uk. If you want to head over there, you'll see a very welcome but unexpected guest in the studio this morning. I don't know if you were listening to Nigel Farage's phone-in with Nick Ferrari last week. If you were, you'll have heard this.
And I just wondered how it feels to be keep getting called a racist.
Yeah, I mean, this is the political class clubbing together, using their mates in the media and doing anything they can to stop the UKIP charge. And because we've got a few idiots in our party, as by the way does every other party, you know, somebody in some part of England says something stupid or offensive on Twitter at midnight, and this is held up as being representative of the view of the party.
Nigel Farage is with me now. Let's start with today's idiots, shall we? And
was that a quote that he was reading of Farage, or was that his opinion on a thing? Or hold on.
Anything they can to stop the UKIP charge. And because we've got a few idiots in our party, as by the way does every other party, you know, somebody in some part of England says something stupid or...
Oh, that's an audio clip of Farage. Okay, all these bongers sound the same to me. I thought it was an audio clip of James O'Brien reading a quote from Farage, but okay, gotcha. Hold on, wait 1 second. This was in 2015? 2014, okay. So this would have been before the formation of the Brexit Party. I don't know if Brexit was being seriously discussed at this point yet. But okay.
Offensive on Twitter at midnight, and this is held up as being representative of the view of the party.
Nigel Farage is with me now. Let's start with today's idiots, shall we? And then move on to what you mean by the political class and their friends in the media. We got John Lyndon Sullivan, I think, overnight. It's emerged, he tweeted, he's a councillor of yours in Gloucestershire. I rather often wonder if we shot one pufter, whether the next 99 would decide on balance that they weren't. Councillor of yours in Gloucestershire. I rather often wonder if we shot one pufter, whether the next 99 would decide on balance that they weren't after all. We might then conclude that it's not...
What does this bonger term mean? One pufta? Pufta?
a matter of genetics, but rather more a matter of education. Admittedly,
means a gay person. Okay.
A fairly small fry in the UKIP machine, not a description you could apply to your small business spokesman, who it turned out this morning has employed 7 illegal immigrants in the last year.
Well, they're two different things, aren't they? I mean, firstly,
I don't know. Are they both idiots?
Firstly, people saying silly things. Yeah, of course, we've had more of it than we would like. But hey, hang on a second. What's going on in the other parties? I mean, we just got the news.
I'll ask them when they're here, Nigel. But I'm talking about your party
today. That's the point. Nobody ever does ask them, and that's the point I'm making. Is I'm perfectly happy for us to have a debate about our idiots and our people who are offensive.
So what happens to John Lyndon Sullivan?
What? Okay, hold on. John Lyndon Sullivan, UKIP. Is there like a pattern of Farage having bad duders around him? I rather often wonder if we shot one poofter, GBLT, whatever, whether the next 99 would decide on balance that they weren't after all. We might then conclude that it's not a matter of genetics, but rather more a matter of education. I understand. Okay. Damn. Wait, and this guy also hired 7 illegal immigrants? Or is that a different person that James O'Brien is talking to?
I'll ask them when
we've had more of it than we would like.
Admittedly, a fairly small fry in the UKIP machine, not a description you could apply to your small business spokesman, who it turned out this morning has employed 7 illegal immigrants in the last year.
Well, they're two different.
Small business spokesperson. So that was a different guy. Okay. Let's throw this under Nigel Farage. He said a small fry, so I'm guessing this was this even an elected person? No, because he only had defectors, right? I'm guessing it was just we'll say bad associations. And then, who was Farage's business spokesperson? Farage, business spokesperson. Richard Tice? Or no, this is an older one. 7 illegal immigrants. I don't know what the name of this person is. Whatever. Richard Tice, the co-leader of reform. Yeah, who was James referring to here?
Different thing. Business spokes.
Oh wait, Amjad Bashir. Was elected in 2014 for the UKIP and defected to the Conservative Party. Okay. Did anything even come of that? Was that just an accusation, or? Okay, maybe not relevant. Don't care.
Who, it turned out this morning, has employed 7 illegal immigrants in the last year.
Well, they're two different things, aren't they? I mean, firstly...
Well, I don't know. Are they both idiots?
Firstly, people saying silly things. Yeah, of course, we've had more of it than we would like. But hey, hang on a second. What's going on in the other parties? I mean, we just got the news...
I'll ask them when they're here, Nigel, but I'm talking about your party
today. That's the point. Nobody ever does ask them, and that's the point I'm making, is I'm perfectly happy for us to have a debate about our idiots and our people who are offensive.
So what happens to John Lyndon Sullivan, then, for that tweet?
He's not a councillor, is he? He's a council candidate.
I think he's already in the council.
Is he? I don't know. I haven't heard of his name.
Well, he's got your party's name on his ballot paper.
I haven't heard of... Well, there's a big difference between being on the ballot paper and being an elected councillor. You know, one comes after the other.
He is an elected councillor.
Is he? Fine. I didn't know that. We have had people...
So what happens to him now?
He will face a disciplinary charge of whether he's brought the party into disrepute.
That was on the 17th of February.
Was it? I don't know.
Okay. What about the small business spokesman who employs 7 illegal immigrants?
Well, I think be a little bit careful on that story. You know, he founded a business which he's no longer a director of. His sons run it. They have got a big row going on.
He resigned, to be clear, as a director of the company 3 days after the immigration raid.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah.
He's resigned as a director
after the immigration raid.
He's not running. Yeah, but he wasn't responsible for the day-to-day running of it.
Hold on, somebody linked these. Reform withdraws support for candidate over post. Reform UK has withdrawn its support for a council by election candidate accused of posting racist, anti-Semitic, xenophobic comments on social media. Mike Manning was the party's chosen candidate in a by-election due to take place on the 19th of February for the Zetland ward on Redcar and Cleveland Borough Council in Teesside. Is a by-election, is that just like a special election? Is that what that means? Like somebody either resigned or got promoted or something happened, or... What did he tweet? It's clear that Mike Manning did not declare his X account to the party during the vetting process. Fuck, why would it not include what he tweeted in here? Am I crazy? Am I missing it? Oh, it was just a ton of shit, I'm guessing, because he didn't declare it. They didn't know his... They didn't know it at all, and then they went through and there was just a lot of shit, I'm guessing. January of 2026. Reform drops 3 candidates over offensive comments. This is June 2024. Okay. All right.
However, I've spoken to him this morning. He says they made checks and they are in dispute with the immigration authorities and they've gone to appeal. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But that doesn't make him an idiot. You know,
what does it make him?
Well, we don't know. You know, let's find out what happens here. Maybe somebody in his business has made a mistake. I do not believe for a moment he would have done that.
Seven mistakes.
I do not believe for a moment he would have done that, knowing that he was running as a candidate for us in the European elections. My argument, James, is this. Wherever we have found people who have had extreme, racist, unpleasant views, we've unceremoniously got rid of them. Furthermore, I've tried to protect the party by making absolutely clear that anybody that had previously been a member of the BNP or organisations like that cannot even join as a member. And to hold up the views of a handful of people as being representative of UKIP, frankly, isn't the truth.
Well, OK, what about your association?
BNP or organisations like that cannot even join as a member. And to hold up the views of a handful of people as being representative of UKIP, frankly, isn't the truth.
Well, OK, what about your associations with the BNP? If we go back to 1997 when you had lunch with a chap called Devin, who, as you know, is responsible for writing an astonishing... I mean, his expose of Jews in the media was called Mindbenders. You were photographed with him.
What is the BNP? The British Moober Party? The British Party? What is the BNP? Oh, BNP, the British National Party. Okay.
It was reported at the time that you're a man who often used words such as nig-nog and the N-word that Jeremy Clarkson recently got into trouble for in the pub after committee meetings. And a month after that lunch, Devin wrote an article for the far-right journal Spearhead suggesting that the BNP and UKIP get into bed together. How does something like that happen?
Well, because Mr. Devin was brought into the centre of UKIP by the chap at the time who was the leader and turned out to be something very different. And I've never seen him since that day.
Well, no, the lunch you had with him was after he was expelled.
Yeah, I wanted to find out why.
Find out why what?
Why somebody like him, who had been held up to me as a great academic, who was going to make a very big difference.
But you'd seen what he'd written.
With a book.
The Grand Plan, the origins of non-white immigration.
I wanted to find out what on earth had made somebody change their point of view. Nothing more than that. I haven't spoken to him since. As for the allegations, you know, as what I said in a pub after committee meetings, you will not find a single other member of that committee who makes that allegation.
Alan Sked has, the founder of
Yes,
UKIP.
I know. Well,
you just said I wouldn't find anyone else. The founder of your party has made the same allegation.
He was the person that made the allegation. Nobody else has made the allegation. Mr. Devin didn't make the allegation. Dr. Sked made the allegation. So, you know, in politics, you know, all sorts of disappointments happen to people, and they throw mud.
Yeah, of course. So what about the mud that's being thrown about the far-right parties with which you sit in Europe? The Danish People's Party, the True Finns Party, the Dutch SGP, and perhaps most interestingly, the Lega Nord. I think you co-chair, do you, that group with
yes,
Francesco Speroni? He described Anders Breivik as someone whose ideas are in defence of Western civilization.
No, he didn't, actually. He didn't. One of his members did, and we kicked him out of the group.
No, you're thinking of Maria Borghesio, who went further and said in a radio interview that Breivik had some excellent ideas. But Speroni himself, who is your co-chair of this group, said that Breivik's ideas are in defence of Western civilization. If
you were to come with me to Italy or Poland or Slovakia and listen to the political discourse, you would realise how incredibly different it is to what we would consider to be acceptable in this country. What I've done in the European Parliament is to try and draw a line and to say we will not sit with people who we believe to be on the extremes. We will sit with people who we believe to have a reasonable, balanced point of view. Now, let's be honest, we have had
Breivik was the guy responsible for the Norway mass shooting. Oh, okay.
And excellent ideas, whose ideas are in defence of Western civilization. Group with which SGP, and perhaps most interestingly, the Lega Nord, I think you co-chair, do you, that group with
yes,
Francesco Speroni? He described Anders Breivik as someone whose ideas are in defence of Western civilization.
No, he didn't, actually. He didn't. One of his members did, and we kicked him out of the group.
No, you're thinking of Maria Borghesio, who went further and said in a radio interview that Breivik had some excellent ideas. But Speroni himself, who is your co-chair of this group, said that Breivik's ideas are in defence of Western civilization.
If you were to come with me to Italy or Poland or Slovakia and listen to the political discourse, you would realise how incredibly different it is to what we would consider to be acceptable in this country. What I've done in the European Parliament is to try and draw a line.
If anything, I respect James for his ability to power through bullshit. Yeah, he deserves some respect for that. But also in Britain back then, and even still today, that's just because they have like real journalists. Like, this is what you're supposed to do if you're a journalist. You don't bring somebody on and have them lie to you like you're a idiot and treating your entire audience like they're all idiots for an hour, like every single American media station does. You're supposed to do shit like this. This is why when Ben Shapiro did his interview with the one dude that was British, it was annihilation. Ben probably heard that, like, oh, he's a conservative like me, so we're going to sit here and, assuming we're the right height, 69 each other for an hour, and it wasn't like that. Instead, it was him getting reamed for 30 or 40 minutes or whatever.
And to say we will not sit with people who we believe to be on the extremes. We will sit with people who we believe to have a reasonable, balanced point of view. Now, let's be honest, we have had a problem in this group with one or two members of the Northern League.
Why don't you just leave it?
Well, we could leave it, and in fact we made sure Mr Borghesio left our group. But equally, I mean, you know, the Conservative Party had the bloke who celebrated the SS invasion of the Baltic states, and we have said, and I'm sure you know this.
But why don't you leave it?
We have said that we will not sit, you know, with the Front National and parties like the Austria Freedom Party. We've made that perfectly clear. You know, we are not a party that wants to be linked to the far right. But I promise you, if you look at the associations everybody has to form in the European Parliament, a degree of compromise is needed.
Well, this is what moves us on to the question about the political class that you referred to in your description of my fears about some of the positions that UKIP seems to represent. Because all of your defence thus far has been, well, we're no different from any other political party, and yet your whole unique selling point for many of your fans and supporters is that you are different. Well, so I think the phrase you used was that members of the political class and their friends in the media. So let's run through that. You currently write columns for The Express and The Independent every week.
Yeah.
You've been on Question Time, I think, in recent months more often than anyone except David Dimbleby. The Private Eye has reported that some of your medical bills are paid by one of the owners.
Hang on, I'm not having this.
Why not?
I'm not having libel thrown at me, live on the radio.
Are you taking legal action against Private Eye?
My medical bills have not been paid by anybody, all right? Other than partly by myself, more than I could afford, and the rest by an insurer. All right?
Okay,
let's
so will you be taking
that.
legal action against Private Eye?
I may do. At the moment, it might surprise you, I'm busy running an election campaign, so I'll think about that afterwards.
Okay, too busy to know who's standing on the council in Gloucestershire under your own banner.
I lead a political party.
Okay.
True, the journalism ecosystem seems much more honest in the UK than the US right now. Kind of, but the problem is the United States infects everybody. So our media, unfortunately, and the bad practice of our media, I think also rolled downstream and have been somewhat influential across probably all of European media at this point, from what I hear. So whether it's like renewed attacks or increased attacks against like the BBC or against or the weird legitimization that we do of far right people. Everybody in our government seems obsessed with like Orban, or obsessed with like Elon Musk aligning himself with like far right parties fucking everywhere, like Le Pen. I don't know what party she has in France, and the AfD, and like he appeared on Tommy Robinson's thing, who's like a white nationalist of the UK. So I, like we're like a super spreader when it comes to journalism retardation, unfortunately, and I think it is having a negative effect on stuff throughout Europe as well.
I don't run the day-to-day management of it, but I make sure that we stick to our principles, and we've done that.
And your principles involve sitting
as for the political class.
Yes.
As for look, you know, I was in business. I came into politics motivated above all by one desire, and that is not for the UK to be part of a political union run by the bureaucrats in Brussels. Now, whether you agree or disagree with that, I have actually given up and sacrificed a huge amount to do that.
Have you? Because the last business you were involved in was, I think you resigned as company secretary 6 weeks before it was wound up by the Inland Revenue.
No, that was the last company I was a director of. Okay, the last company I ran was my own company, which I ran for 9 years and which closed down in good standing.
Okay, so you weren't company secretary of Farage.
I was company secretary, yes,
right. And you resigned 6 weeks before.
It was a non-income related job. I wasn't paid a penny for being company secretary.
Well, presumably, because if they owed 120 grand to the Inland Revenue, there wasn't any money around to pay you anything.
I did the job doing somebody in my family a favour. It was unpaid. It wasn't.
But you represent yourself, Nigel, very effectively as an alternative to cronyism and city spivery. And you were company secretary of a company that was wound up by the Inland Revenue, owing over £120,000 to the revenue.
Wrong.
Okay, so what would you like to correct?
The company has not been wound up. The company...
Why did you resign?
Hang on a second. Okay. The company, which is not my company, it's somebody else's company.
Company secretary.
And I don't own any shares in the company. I was doing a favour for somebody on an unpaid basis. The company, far from winding up, actually said we have a responsibility to make sure our tax bill is paid, and it is being paid. Actually, it's being paid out of earned income. So the inland revenue is getting twice the money out of it that it would have done to begin with.
After the winding up order was issued.
The company has not been wound up.
Just to be clear, I don't have a city background.
The company has not been wound up, all right? The company still exists, it's active, and it's in the business of paying back the money that it owes.
After the winding up order was issued by the Inland Revenue.
Have you ever worked in private business? You know, people have successes and people have failures.
No, I'm an ordinary person. I don't understand how these financial institutions
operate. There are 4.8 million people out there running small business. I bet a lot of them listening to this now. And many of them will have had ups and downs. Many of them will have had cash flow problems. Some of them will have had firms that didn't work, but a subsequent one that did. I, myself, in the private sector, ran my own firm for 9 years without any difficulty or problems at all. And the point is, I came to do this because I want to engage on the big political debates and issues of the day. And the frustration is this, that, and I'm not, putting this to you because it doesn't matter where I go. All anyone wants to talk about are the idiots in UKIP. There's never a conversation about the idiots in the Labour Party, the 5 councillors who've just resigned on racism charges in Middlesbrough.
To be honest, I never hear you say anything else on your question about your own party.
And the problem is, we're not having a debate about the European Union.
But people aren't worried that the Labour Party or the Conservative Party is spreading racist propaganda.
Well, why the Conservative Party got a former BNP activist standing for them in Lincolnshire? Will you ask the Conservative?
Of course I will, absolutely.
But you won't, you see, because
now you're calling me a liar. Of course,
nobody ever does.
I've answered your question. The reason why it doesn't possess the same urgency as the UKIP conversation does is A, the question of quantity. There is simply not the avalanche of bigotry emerging from other parties that emerges from yours. And B, perhaps more pertinently for you then, there is not a fear abroad afoot. There is not a fear in the country. The opinion polls do not report significant swathes of the nation who are fearful, possibly wrongly, Nigel, that your party represents deeply divisive and racist ideas. If you'd let me finish, let me just move on then to that invitation to go overseas and listen to conversations in other countries where perhaps far-right politics are not viewed as askance as they are in this country. You've mentioned your discomfort at listening to foreign languages on a train recently.
I made the point that I got on a train and went for several stops, and there were a lot of people around me and no one spoke English. And I thought, this is. I didn't say I didn't object to it. I felt slightly uncomfortable. And I think actually, isn't that the problem? Isn't this, of all the countries in Europe, the most accepting, the most tolerant?
You said I don't feel very comfortable in that situation. You did say you had a problem.
I didn't feel comfortable. No.
Yes, your wife is a German speaker.
Well, my children are too. Yeah.
Does that make you feel uncomfortable?
The level of discourse is so much higher, even the language is more complicated. That's just a cultural thing. For some reason in the US, I don't know why, but intelligence became kind of a weirdly feminine trait. I don't think that ever happened in the United Kingdom. They speak better than us. And it's not seen as you're super intelligent. It's just an ordinary person. I mean, they also have their, what do you call them, chavs? I don't know what they're weird, whatever, lower people too. But a normal person can speak, I think, better than what the average American expects to hear people speak as. If you hear somebody like Bush speak, you're like, oh, thank God, that's an everyman. But in the UK, they don't feel like they have to dumb their language down as much for whatever reason. I don't know why. I don't know why that is in the US, but Boris did as well. Yeah, maybe, but I wonder how much the Trump stuff influenced that. Didn't Trump like Boris a lot? I feel like I don't know how closely they were linked. I don't know.
Comfortable.
I'm just saying, as a general rule, if you listen to an ordinary British person speaking on any British TV show or whatever the else, it's going to sound a lot different than an ordinary American speaking.
I didn't feel comfortable. No.
Yes, your wife is a German speaker.
Well, my children are too, yeah.
Does that make you feel uncomfortable?
No, because they can speak English, and the whole point about
how do you know those people couldn't?
Well, maybe they could, but I got the distinct feeling that it certainly wasn't their language of choice. And if you look at the primary school situation in the East End of London, where you've now got schools where a majority don't speak English, doesn't that say to us? Doesn't that say to us that what we want is a sensible, balanced immigration policy, where we want people with skills to come into Britain, but we also want integration in society.
Of course we do. And the schools you refer to, the pupils you refer to, are registered and recorded as having English as a second language. They're not registered and recorded as not being able to speak English. That's precisely that sort of...
some of both.
Well, yes, but no one's counted them, so your own children would fit into that category.
Well, hopefully. Lots of people can speak different languages, but the point I'm making is, do we want to live in an integrated society?
No, forgive me. The point you're making is that schools in the East End are full of children who can't speak English. I just want you to recognise that's not true, what you just said. The children who are typified as speaking English as a second language would include your own daughters. Their mother tongue being German.
They come from homes where English is most definitely not the first language, and in too many cases is not the language at all. Now look,
but no one's counted how many people are in the second category.
And it would be a very helpful and useful thing if they did, and perhaps we'd be even more surprised and even more shocked. But the argument...
Or perhaps we'd realise that most bilingual children in this country are children like yours.
Well, let's turn it around the other way, shall we?
Yes, let's.
Let's talk about immigration. Let's talk about Europe. Let's talk about the European elections. I am making one very simple point. We cannot have any form of managed migration into Britain and remain a member of the European Union because we have an open door to nearly 500 million people. And the argument, James, I'm putting is this. We'd be far better to have an immigration policy that didn't, as it currently does, discriminate against engineers from India or doctors from New Zealand in favour of anybody, regardless of skill levels or backgrounds, coming from Southern and Eastern Europe.
Oh, so it seems like what he's saying kind of sort of exactly happened, but in the exact opposite way that he wanted, because now migration from EU countries has fallen off a cliff, and now a lot of their people are coming from places like North Africa or Southeast Asia to make up the gap, which is not really what I think he wanted, or what anybody that was kind of supporting these people wanted.
And that is the great debate. And when Nick Clegg, took me on and I tried to have that debate with him, he was very reluctant on that particular point to engage. Cameron and Miliband run a country mile away from that debate. And that, I think, is at the heart of our relationship with Europe.
Indeed. And I mean, if that was the debate that you'd offered to have on this programme, we'd have it now. But what the caller asked you was why so many people think you're racist.
Yeah, well, I think, yes, we've had our idiots.
And part of the answer would be, you talk about children who can't speak English as a first language without mentioning it includes your own children.
I mean, what is racism? Is racism between racism? And I was talking about.
Don't you know? How can you say you're not something if you don't know what it is?
Didn't he say he wanted less from Eastern Europe and more from Southeast Asia? Yeah, but I don't know if the average reformer person would feel that way now. I feel like they would say, no, we want more EU immigration and less of the weirdo Muslim North Africa, Southeast Asia stuff. Maybe not. I guess I need to find polling on that. Maybe they wouldn't say that. I don't know. That's my vibe. Or they want less of all immigration, I guess. I don't know.
Race about colour?
But the absolute numbers exploded like crazy as well, so...
Is race about race, or is it about nationality? I made a comment there that wasn't intended to say any more, but I felt uncomfortable about the rate and pace of change and numbers of...
No, you felt uncomfortable about people speaking foreign languages, despite the fact that...
Nah, reform retards think Europe is full of Pakis, Afghanis, etc. Does the average reform person think there are more Pakis or Pakistanis or Afghanis in Europe or in Pakistan and Afghanistan?
Presumably your own wife does when she finds home to Germany.
Yeah, I don't suppose she speaks it on the train, That's
why not? Is she not allowed to? Can't she speak German wherever she wants? And what about the line about not wanting to live next door to Romanians? It's perfectly acceptable for people not to...
I was asked if a group of Romanian men moved in next door to you, would you be concerned?
What about if a group of German children did?
Okay, they really don't like Eastern Europeans. Okay, pace. Jesus.
What's the difference?
The difference, and you know what the difference is.
No, I honestly don't. This is, I think, where the disconnect is between your position and mine. What is the difference?
We want an immigration policy based on controlling not just quantity but quality as well. And we have a problem that and unfortunately, those communist countries, which I visited, and I visited the Roma encampments, and I've seen the real poverty that people live in, and we talk about exclusion in society. Go and see, since the fall of communism, what has happened to the Roma communities in those countries. They don't get jobs, they get nowhere to live, and they have been forced, in many cases, to a life of crime. And what has happened with an open door is it's been an open invitation for the traffickers. Now, we all know this is going on.
Okay.
The Metropolitan Police...
Trafficking is a crime, of course.
Trafficking is a crime.
And trafficked people are victims of crime.
Yes, and the Metropolitan Police have produced their crime statistics, and they're eye-watering. And I'm saying, let's get a grip on it.
I know you're saying that about Romanians, but why can't you understand how many people feel troubled that you're also talking about them? 32 million people are looking for jobs in Europe, and that big clunking fist pointing, saying that they're
that
coming...
was a provocative post.
They're coming for your job. That frightens people.
Well,
people who are already here working.
Sadly,
people who my children go to school with. Their parents are troubled by the idea that they're now being demonised and typified. And you gloss so smoothly and so slickly over... demonising Romanians and demonising Germans.
I'm not demonising anybody.
You just asked you a question about Romanians and you started talking about people traffickers.
I'm demonising a political class that has allowed us to have an open door to allow things like this to happen.
Okay, so when I say Romanian and you start talking about people traffickers, why didn't you say people are perfectly entitled to feel uncomfortable about living next door to people traffickers, wherever they're from? Why did you say Romanians?
I didn't say Romanians. I was asked a question. If a group of Romanian men moved in next to you, would you be concerned? And if you lived in London, I think you would be.
Yes. It's reported this morning, Nigel, that you pulled out of an interview on London Live because there was no makeup artist.
What a load of
That's what
I'm sorry. That's what I thought you can accuse me of many things, but not that.
Well, I've tried to, and I'm delighted you're so happy. I'm still utterly unpersuaded as to why you sit on a party with the leader.
Why do they hate Romanians? Can you summarize the lore? Not well. This is different shit in Europe. Like your quote-unquote high-quality people in Western Europe are going to be people that were part of... would you say NATO or like first world countries? And then your quote unquote low quality people that a lot of Western Europeans look at are going to be your second world countries. So those that were part of the Warsaw Pact or the ex-Soviet satellite states, basically, once the Iron Curtain fell. So immigrants from places in like the Balkans or from Eastern Europe, places like Poland, I think especially, are people that I think in general, they're okay to have like seasonal workers come in and then they kind of send them back. They're basic, I guess you could say, like, I think maybe, like, in general, I think you could say, like, Central Europe, well, that's what they wanted to be called. Like, the Balkans and Eastern Europe are, like, the Mexicans, I think, maybe, of, like, Europe to America. That's how we would view them. They're like Mexicans. So if you want to come and work a little bit, fine, maybe, but don't come in so much that you're changing our culture. Don't stay too much. You're bad people compared to the rest of us. Like, this is, like, a very, very, very broad brush stroke thing.
of the Italian Lega Nord, a member of the Anders Breivik fan club. I'm completely I do not understand why you use words like Romanian when describing who you would and would not want to live next door to. I don't understand why you're uncomfortable listening to foreign languages when your own wife and children speak them. And I don't understand why you talk about problems in primary schools that are caused by children like your own.
Why don't you? I tell you what, why don't you come and meet UKIP's black and ethnic candidate? Hang on.
Some of my best friends.
Wait, somebody mentioned... Wait, I just saw a comment about Roma people too. I don't know what the population of Gypsy people are in any of these places. I think Gypsy might be considered a slur now. I don't know. But Romanian has nothing to do with, I don't believe, has any... I should look this up before I say something. I don't think Roma and Romania have anything to do with each other. Is Roma related to Romanian? The Roma people, I think, are the Gypsy people, but they're not. It's like Java and JavaScript. They're not really related. Are not related to Romanian. Similar name is a coincidence. Okay. Roma people are the Gypsies that came from the Romans. Sorry, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Sorry.
Hang on. Well, very interesting. Did you see the opinion poll at the weekend that showed amongst the BME community, UKIP is now polling at 16%. We're getting more BME voters than the Conservatives and Lib Dems added up together. So there are a large number...
I will come with you, and you come with me and meet the opinion poll also at this weekend that found, I think, just over 40% of voters who think that your party is racist.
What do you
think you've done in the last 20 minutes? I know we don't have any longer. I was hoping for an hour, but what do you think you've done in the last 20 minutes to assuage the fears of those people?
Made it clear to people that actually controlling the quantity and quality of people that come into your country is a primary duty of government, and we cannot do it as members of the European Union.
And finally, the question of your expenses and your financial arrangements. I heard you on Radio 4 saying that you'd submit to a full audit. You've reverse ferreted on that.
Can anybody give me a single thing? What would a right winger say that the United Kingdom was not able to do to exert influence over their borders when they were in the European Union, given that they weren't part of the free movement area? What would a right winger say? So a right winger says, we need control of our borders, and I were to counter, there's nothing that prevents you from controlling your borders if you're in the EU. What would their response be? We did have free movement, though. If you had free movement, it was because of the decisions that your government made, though. Not because of, like, unless there was another free movement zone that I'm not familiar with. But I believe that the Schengen area, where you can travel without having to show a passport or whatever, the UK was not part of this. I don't believe it was, right? It was not part of this. So if you had the ability for people to come in and out easily, it was because of a decision that your free movement is different than the Schengen area. Okay, what's the difference between... Okay, Schengen versus free movement, European Union. As an EU national, you enjoy the right of free movement. This means you're entitled to travel, work, and live in another EU country. If you're a citizen of a Schengen country, which is most EU countries, you're also free to travel to other Schengen countries without the need for border checks. As an EU national, you can also benefit from EU-wide passenger rights for travel info out of or within the EU by air, rail, bus, coach, or ship. Schengen ID free. Okay, so this means that if you were in the UK, so then theoretically why did nobody that I debate? I feel like I debated Sargon and all these people. Why did nobody ever counter this point? Oh my God. Okay. I said this for a long time and nobody's ever corrected me on this, but Directive 2004-38 EC. Let's see. No one knows anything about UK ship route. Yeah, but even the bongers that I debated, it feels like they didn't know all about this. But all right, let's see. On the right of citizens of the Union and their family members to move and reside freely within the territory of the member states, amending. Is this really true, though? So if you're in the EU, let's assume that lowest population EU state. Okay, Estonia has 1.4 million people. So if 1 million people in Germany were like, we want to move to Estonia, Estonia would have to accept them? People also accused the French of intentionally letting people come through the border and climb about trucks on the Channel Tunnel. They were convinced the entire EU had a plot to funnel immigrants to us. Yes, but it doesn't mean that 1 million can vote. Long term, this is only allowed if you have a job. This is about labor movements, not just moving to a country because you prefer the weather. No one wants to move to Estonia, so no. Okay. Are you sure? I don't see anything here about the right to work. It just says you have the right to... What the kind of moon ruin Pokemon unknown tunnel ass bullshit is this? What the English? Okay. Citizenship of the Union confers on every citizen of the Union a primary and individual right to move and freely reside within the territory of the member state, subject to the limitations and conditions laid down in the treaty and to the measures adopted to give it effect. Okay, so that means that you could move without a job, right? In order to maintain the unity of family in a broader sense without prejudice to the prohibition. Okay. Okay, so I guess one question, one thing that would be nice to have an answer to is, were there a lot of European Union people moving into Britain or the United Kingdom that at the very least they perceived, whether they were or were not, that they perceived as causing problems? So was it just Polish people? Were Polish? I feel like I don't hear international. I never hear like gang rapes of Polish people or by Polish people or anything. Because I feel like I always hear problems about like the Muslim duders. Non-EU immigration to the UK by reason. Okay, EU-based immigration. Maybe about 100,000 a year. Was this actually like a significant... I don't know where I would see this. Okay, you know what? What about... Was this from the same interview? 4 months and 9 months? No. Man, this guy really... Well, I searched immigration, to be fair. Try this one, I guess.
If you can't secure your own borders, you're not really a government, because it's the first duty of government to secure the borders of the realm. If you can't do that, you failed as a government, no matter what else you've done. we've had Tory and Labour governments that in that regard have failed us.
The British Egyptian activist Alaa Abdel Fattah has apologised for past comments he made online where he called for Zionists and the police to be killed and for the burning down of number 10 Downing Street. He said he's been shaken that the tweets have led to calls for the removal of his British citizenship. Clearly, you heard from Chris Philp earlier who said the apology was insincere, he should be deported. Andrew, I think there are two issues at heart, really. The first is what happened so catastrophically wrong that meant that Whitehall, Westminster, number 10 weren't aware of the views that Alaa Abdel Fattah had and had made very clear in the past. And second of all, then there's this question looming about deportation and what happens next.
Okay, well, let's take the first issue. It's clear that neither Labour nor Conservative governments did their homework. They didn't know that this guy had done all these terrible posts in years gone by. They didn't know, even though in 2014, when he was up for some kind of human rights award, it was made public he wasn't going to get it because he already had posted on social media in previous years. And it's all very well, let's just get rid of the Tories, first of all. It's all very well for the Shadow Home Secretary to come on to
Andrew Neil giving his own political opinions. He's a right-winger. Yeah, but I figure the best... I think this guy is supposed to be decently smart, right? I figured the best anti-immigration argument or strongest arguments about why immigration is so are probably going to come from people like him, I would imagine, right?
Radio and call this guy a scumbag. Fair enough. Let's just remember it was the Tories that gave this so-called scumbag British citizenship in 2021. It was Tory governments, first of all. It's all very well for the Shadow Home Secretary to come on to Times Radio and call this guy a scumbag. Fair enough. Let's just remember it was the Tories that gave this so...
Which guy is he talking about here? Hold on, sorry. Oh my God, YouTube.
About deportation and what happens next.
Okay, well, let's take the first issue. It's clear that neither Labour nor Conservative governments did their homework. They didn't know that this guy had done all these terrible posts in years gone by. They didn't know, even though in 2014, when he was up for some kind of human rights award, it was made public he wasn't going to get it because he already had posted on social media in previous years. And it's all very well, but let's just get rid of the Tories, first of all. It's all very well for the Shadow Home Secretary to come on to Times Radio and call this guy a scumbag. Fair enough. Let's just remember it was the Tories that gave this so-called scumbag British citizenship in 2021. It was Tory governments that campaigned for this guy's release. So they're just as complicit as Labour in this. Let's come forward now to Labour, which now has a responsibility for this. The Prime Minister says he's delighted that this guy's back in Britain. I'm not aware that this guy's ever been in Britain in the first place. He's got British citizenship with no discernible characteristic of being British in any which way. All his beliefs would seem to be thoroughly anti-British. He despises Britain. He calls us dogs and monkeys. He wants to kill white people. He wants to kill all British police. He wants to kill Zionists. So that's the kind of guy that the Prime Minister now welcomes back onto these shores. But let me just say this on the second issue. Now that he's here, there's no way this guy's going to be deported. Where are we going to deport him to? First of all, we'll have to go through endless legal hurdles, all of which will be manned by Keir Starmer's friends in the human rights industry. We'll probably fail these hurdles. Even if we pass, you think the Egyptians are going to take him back?
Can you deduce the reason why the EU has freedom of movement, labor, and capital in relation to the foundational ideas behind the EU? Well, probably because the European Union was trying to create a more integrated super state, kind of like how the United States is with all of our individual states, right? Ease of capital transfer, ease of labor transfer, ease of economic everything. Like it makes you a stronger, more cohesive body to have a stronger economy, have a stronger negotiating position against the rest of the world. You're just stronger. You're always stronger in groups, right? Like the United States having 50 individual states with a massive amount of financial integration, freedom of movement, same currency is incredibly and immensely beneficial to us.
Back, and you ought to see the Egyptian press this morning. They're over the moon, they've got rid of him. He's now lumbered in Britain. So it's a catastrophic error by Labour and Conservative, and it's an error in which the toothpaste cannot be put back into the tube.
And I should stress, Andrew, that...
The issue is that the United States kind of started off, or at least very early in our history, had this concept of being a unified thing, but the European countries have way more history and strong feelings about their identification with their countries. Like, I don't know if anybody in the EU feels like they're a citizen of the EU. Whereas in America, most people, maybe people in Texas feel different, or like in New York City feel different, but like most people are like, oh, I'm American. I'm American. That's like my first identity. Like they would identify closer and quicker with the country of the United States of America rather than like the state they're from, with limited exceptions. I don't know for people who live in Spain or France if they're like, oh, I'm EU. Whereas like, I'm French. Yeah, we're in the European Union, But, yeah.
Labour and Conservative, and it's an error in which the toothpaste cannot be put back into the tube.
And I should stress, Andrew, that it was about 1 o'clock this morning that El Fattah did sort of release a statement, said sorry for his shocking and hurtful posts, said he'd written them during online insult battles while deeply enmeshed in antagonistic online cultures using flippant, shocking and sarcastic tones.
Well, of course he's apologising now. He's apologising now because he's been rumbled. He's apologising now because all these things have come out in the public, and he's saying, oh, it's out of context. Really? How is let's burn 10 Downing Street down, let's kill all British police. In what possible context could statements like that be justified?
Can I jump in here, Andrew, and just ask? I thought it was really interesting with Chris Philp because, he was saying that there is different legislation, whether you are a dual citizen or you just have British citizenship. And we can deport people, for reasons, if they are committing, we know what seem to be communications that's not conducive, to public life here, hate speech, etc. Is it right that we have two different rules, basically, if you're a British citizen with just single citizenship, as opposed to if you are a dual national?
I don't really know. That's a legal question. I'm not really competent to answer. What I do know is that it's irrelevant. You can have all the power you want to deport somebody. The issue then comes to where are you going to deport him? Who's going to take him now? I mean, you seriously think the Egyptians are going to take him back? They're delighted to get rid of him. Where else are you going to send him to? To France? I don't think they're going to want him at all. So I don't see the point. And he's got British citizenship, rightly or wrongly. In my view, wrongly. It was performative virtue signalling by the Tories, picked up by Labour and made even worse. We're lumbered with him. We're stuck with him through the incompetence of Labour and Conservative administrations. We've allowed someone who hates Britain onto our shores, and we will not be able to get rid of him.
You've used the word incompetence, Andrew. There's a Labour minister said, Starmer's lost the trust of British Jews. One minister said, it's truly shocking. We've welcomed a racist anti-Semite into our country with open arms. Serious questions need to be asked about the lack of judgment here, and the Home Office should seriously be contemplating stripping him of his British citizenship. Do you think this is, Keir Starmer came in to lead the Labour Party, promising to rid the Labour Party of anti-Semitism. Do you think there is a hint of any of this here, or it's all just sheer incompetence?
I don't think this is anything about the Labour Party and anti-Semitism. I think it says more about their incompetence. I mean, the fact is they went in, and this includes the Conservatives as well, they went in to bat for this guy, who's clearly a nasty piece of work. They went in to bat for him, they fought for him.
Was Corbyn ever Prime Minister, or did the Labour Party have any success under Corbyn, or were they always kind of until Corbyn stepped aside for somebody more moderate? No? Okay, well.
Gave him British citizenship. They campaigned to get him out of jail in Egypt. They campaigned to get him here, but they hadn't done their homework. They hadn't bothered to find out what kind of character he really is. And the British people are, as a result, lumbered. He's not being allowed in because he's an anti-Semite. He's been allowed in despite the fact that he's an anti-Semite because it seemed that we didn't know. Now, there are some stories doing the rounds that perhaps a few people in the Foreign Office or the British Civil Service did know.
Do you know about Rishi Sunak's Rwanda plan? No, I have it written here to read about real quick, though. But it sounded like the idea was they could just ship everybody off to Rwanda, that people they don't like. Didn't we think that, did Lincoln or people float that idea about Liberia? Maybe we ship all the black people back to, or over to Liberia or something? I don't know. It sounded retarded, but I haven't looked into it much yet, so.
No, but didn't want to do anything about it. That may come out in the watch, because as you know, the story's got legs. It ain't ended yet. But I just think, we got enough people who hate Britain in this country already, without inviting in one more, who had no real basis for British citizenship in the first place.
And saying that you are delighted that he's now here. That word was used not only by Keir Starmer, but also David Lammy and Yvette Cooper, who I'm sure are now regretting those words.
Oh, not for the first time. Half of what they say, they seem to regret within 24 hours these days.
Andrew, we should talk to you about this because the Prime Minister was hoping that the French police were going to help him stop boats crossing the Channel. But it's not the most surprising news ever. The police aren't helping. The police unions say the concern is if we sort of intervene in the water and our police action causes injury or the death of a migrant, then we'll be prosecuted. So therefore, we're not going to take that risk, which you might think, Andrew, fair enough.
I think it is fair. The French police unions are looking after the interests of their members, and they're worried that an intervention, even in shallow waters, could lead to people drowning, and that would therefore make vulnerable French police to issues of criminal liability. So I don't think this is a surprising development at all. I mean, we, the British people, the British government, have given the French £800 million since 2015 to stop the boats, and we might as well have poured the money down the drain for all the good that it has done. I mean, I think the British are a bit naive in this. There is no interest in France in stopping the boat people. And the interest is let them go on the boats, let them go to Britain. We don't want them here, let them go to Britain. That'll be Britain's problem, not ours. And there is no deterrent to people now becoming boat people and making their way to Britain. There's really now nothing to stop them, even in shallow waters. They're not being stopped. When they get into British water, they have to be under international law, taken by the British onto British shores. It's well nigh impossible to deport any of them, as we've seen over the years. So if you make it, you're in Britain, and you're in Britain for good. You've done it, job done. What's not to like? It's the only real danger, of course, is the appalling danger of making that channel crossing, in which many people have died. It is a human tragedy. And I'll just remind our listeners that this wasn't the way that Mr. Starmer said he was going to solve the problem.
So this sounds like one of the things we read about, that this is one of the ways that Brexit hurt the British ability to kind of like fight against these refugee asylum seekers, and that apparently if you were part of the European Union, you were part of something called the Dublin Convention, to where if somebody came to your country but they'd already tried to go to another European country, a European Union country, and they were rejected, you could just reject them on that basis. But you can't do that now. According to British law anymore, you have to do more processing or some bullshit.
He was going to solve the problem by smashing the people smuggler gangs. He told me that, he told people all that, he told Times Radio that many times during the election campaign. He would solve this problem.
I made you a little guide on who Bonger's view is okay immigrants versus not okay. These are Horn, Holiday. Gotcha. Thank you.
By smashing the people smuggling gangs. Well, in the past year, there have been 40,000 people come across the channel, and it's now clear that smashing the people smuggling gangs was nothing but a soundbite to get them through the election campaign of 2024, and Labour policies, as with the Tories before them, are going nowhere.
Well, we were suspicious that was the case at the time. But ultimately, Andrew, he does want to solve this problem. I mean, some of his political future is sort of staked on it now, isn't it? It becomes the priority. And actually, the words you said, saying there's no effective deterrent in the channel, the Prime Minister himself said those words to French police sort of a month ago, saying there is no effective deterrent in the channel against people making those perilous crossings. So they are desperate to solve this problem, if not only just for their political survival. Why can't they do it?
Well, it's the reason why they're under 20% in the polls, and that they're still way behind reform. Even the Tories have overtaken them in the past couple of polls that I've seen. It's very difficult. There are only two ways to solve this problem. One is you create a clear legal route for asylum seekers, a clear legal route in which the asylum cases are processed offshore, not in the country, offshore, and those who are entitled to asylum, and we shouldn't forget there are always people entitled to asylum, and Britain should be doing its bit to welcome these people to our country, to give them safe harbour. And the second is you make it clear that anybody who doesn't choose that route and chooses an illegal route, like the boat people, will be immediately deported to a third territory, and they will have to stay in that territory until they can be sent back to whence they came. That would be a major deterrent. That's how the Australians solved the issue, and how they don't have I was in Australia a couple of months ago. They don't really have a problem at all with illegal immigration or illegal asylum seekers anymore.
Andrew, can you see this Prime Minister, a former human rights lawyer, enacting a policy like that?
No, of course not. But what would be wrong with a clear legal route and a clear deportation of people who come to our country illegally? After all, if you can't secure your own borders, you're not really a government, because it's the first duty of government to secure them.
Somebody needs to like patch the asylum hack, because I feel like the asylum hack is being used a lot in the past like 7 years, and nobody's like patched it yet. It just feels kind of stupid that somebody can show up at your country, say, I'm an asylum seeker, and then like millions of people can do this, or in their case, hundreds of thousands of people can do this, and it's like, well, I guess we have to take you now. LOL, you got us. I mean, what do you do? Make a better process for processing those people or something, or I don't know, you have to do something. In the U.S., we would have expanded our asylum court system. Like, I don't know, but it seemed it was in the U.S. for a long time, or for a few years, I guess. I shouldn't say for a long time.
Or not.
That's where I've been.
We've watched this, but it's a good video. Actually, we'll watch it again because it's such a good video.
Or it's Mark. Or not.
That's where I've been for the last few years. I've got to say, I'm immensely grateful to you for everything you've done in British politics over the last few years. I used to be an ardent Remainer. I voted Remain. I believed in the European project.
Mm-hmm.
I believed that staying in the European Union was the best thing for us. And then something happened, and something monumental happened. It completely changed my opinion on the whole situation.
What was that monumental thing, Mark?
I was kicked in the head by a horse.
Right, very good. Okay, fine.
I just love this clip. Jesus Christ. This one is good too.
It's a bit early in the day, so all I've got actually is coffee, but I hope you enjoy a few pints with the lads tonight. Up the Ra!
Up the Ra, Nigel. I mean, I know that you said sorry. I know you get 87 quid. It's entirely within your rights to do that. But
what is up the Ra being the IRA? Oh, okay.
Come on, don't.
All right, let's get right to it. Do you have nuclear weapons?
Whoa. The dictator. Okay, wait, quick meme break. What is this?
You got this, guys. Here.
Jesus.
Weapon papers out the bar!
Oh!
None no grease!
Oh no.
Take it out, take it out, take it out!
No.
I don't know what to do.
Take it out, Zoel, take it out, take it outside! Take it outside!
Wait, this is actually bad.
It's gonna take, yes, take it out!
I can't, it's too hot.
Wait.
Take it, you use the pliers, the things!
What happened to this poor toast?
What the fuck? I don't know what anything to hear.
Don't use water on oil.
Don't use water.
Wait, don't we have like a shirt? Take off your shirt.
It's fine. It's fine.
Take it out.
Take off your shirt. No. Okay. Wait, open the door.
I got you.
Yeah.
Take it outside.
Yeah.
The dog's pissed, by the way. Be careful.
The dog knew.
Be careful. It's gonna slosh.
No, it's not. Oh my.
Holy.
Based? Okay.
It's 3 minutes.
Farage criticized for £400,000 job promoting physical gold as pension investment. Reform leader promotes direct bullion, but experts say commodities not for everyday investors. Oh, you guys have the same. Does he also do Black Rifle coffee? I don't care about meme compilations from Cameo. Please stop. Jesus, stop. I think y'all got the gold shit from us. Good memes. Okay. Okay, I never even finished reading this article. You don't want to watch Farage say sussy Chungus imposter? No, the Cameo shit is the least funny meme shit that I've ever seen in my entire life, and it's always been unfunny. Okay. Brexit happened. Okay, blah, blah, blah. We had gotten this. Okay, we have to... wait, what year is this? 2021. In this campaign, make people understand that EU membership and uncontrolled immigration are synonymous with each other, declared UKIP leader Nigel Farage on April 29th, 2016. As the new EU-UK agreement has entered into force on January 1st, 2021, it's time to evaluate whether the UK has gained more control of immigration by leaving the EU. Before Brexit, the UK was not part of the Schengen area, and British authorities already controlled passengers crossing their borders. Wait, hold on, wait. So this is saying what I said before, but you guys said that was wrong, and it looked like it was wrong. Is this right or is this wrong? I don't understand. Did British control of borders, European Union?
Defending our borders and protecting our coastline, security has always preoccupied the islands of the UK, and it's playing in this referendum too. But does the EU make us safer, or does it make no difference? So, what are the claims?
Leave suggests the EU's border-free zone helps terrorists get closer to the UK. The Remain camp thinks cooperation with the EU makes us safer.
So, for the fifth and final time, who is right?
Let's start with the Leave statement. Britain isn't in the Schengen area, the border-free zone within the EU that allows people to travel freely without passport controls. The UK is still very much in control of her borders, which have been watched by Dover Castle for 900 years. Even so, the Leave team says free travel around the EU allows would-be terrorists to get closer to the UK.
I don't think it's right, because I think that the UK would still retain the same border controls that it has now. Britain's been spending more on its borders. It's been putting in more measures in place to pick up intelligence, but also electronic ways of censoring people, checking their identity and so on. I think Britain will continue to do that, whether it's within the European Union or not.
Over there is Calais, and right now there is an effort made to stop migrants from even making the 22-mile journey across the Channel to where we are now. The Prime Minister and Remain camp has suggested that if the UK pulled out of the EU, support for that project would go, and this shoreline and a castle like this would once again face a fresh wave of migration. But our experts have told us they don't think that would happen.
France and Britain do have an interest in controlling their own borders, the movement of people and so on. And so I think it's unlikely that you would see a dramatic breakdown in the bilateral relationship between the two countries on borders and border control issues.
There are currently 4 ways in which we do cooperate with the EU for our security. The first way is the European arrest warrant, and it is widely used to help us catch criminals. In 2014, we made 228 requests of our European neighbours, and they made 13,000 requests of us. Then the second way, the European criminal record system. It does what it says on the tin. It allows us all to pool information from different criminal databases. This last one is possibly something we could negotiate to keep, even if we did leave the EU, as are the next 2. The Schengen Information System. This is the pooling of information from borders around the EU. And the last one, Interpol. The pooling of policing expertise.
Graphics.
Working together as in terms of intelligence gathering and intelligence sharing does imply partnership and does imply sharing. So we will have things to trade with others, they will have things to trade with us. And that's the key really to the intelligence business. And so that's what the UK would continue to have even outside the European Union.
The bottom line is this. Leave are wrong that Schengen means more terrorists get to the UK. Our border controls are the same whether we're in or out of the EU. But are Remain right to say we're safer staying in? No. We might lose the European arrest warrant, but the other cooperations could be negotiated, and our bilateral relationships will continue whether the UK is in or out. Allegra Stratton, News at 10.
With Brexit, there have been 2 changes. First, the UK's withdrawal from EU agreements on third country immigration, and second, the end of EU citizens' freedom to reside and work in the UK. From July, this will get into it. 2014 to June 2015, the non-EU net migration in the UK was positive by 163,000. 4 years later, it had increased by 37.5%. Brexit does not mean more, but less control of this rising inflow for three reasons. First is the UK's exited Dublin cooperation. It can no longer return irregular asylum seekers who had transited through the EU. Second, the UK has lost a stable framework to cooperate with the EU on migration in the Mediterranean. The House of Commons in 2016, British Secretary of State for Defence Michael Fallon recognized the UK's very strong interest in trying to curb illegal migration from the African littoral into Europe. I've never heard that term before, littoral. The reason is that a sizable proportion of these migrants are trying to reach the UK. Therefore, the UK's withdrawal from the missions to stem this inflow may result in more irregular immigration. Third, the UK was among the most active Europol members and now keeps only distant cooperation with this EU agency that combats immigrant smuggling. The UK has lost its seat on Europol's management board, and British officers can no longer interrogate the Europol database. Less cooperation will impair British efforts to dismantle immigrant smuggling networks. Indeed, with Brexit, the UK has achieved more control of the inflow of EU citizens. However, this inflow has been plummeting. Between July of 2014 and June 2015, net migration from the EU to the UK was positive by 212,000, with Central and Eastern European migrants accounting for 60%. 4 years later, the total had shrunk to 48,000, with the share of Central and Eastern European migrants down to about 40%. A reason for the large inflow in previous years was that the UK had been the first EU country to recognize the free movement of people from new EU members in Central and Eastern Europe on the 1st of May 2004, whereas Germany kept restrictions until 2011. Today, Germany is an attractive destination for migrants from Central and Eastern Europe. Their net migration in that country rose from 60,000 in 2006 to 150,000 in 2016. Another factor explaining the decline in EU immigration to the UK has been a steady increase in living standards across Central and Eastern Europe. The Polish GDP per capita has reached 40% of the British one, up from 12.5% in 2003. Damn. Meanwhile, more control of flows from the EU has come at an excessive cost for the UK. Britons have lost their free movement rights and the related opportunities to reside, study, work, or provide services in Europe. In short, it is dubious that Brexit has offered back control of immigration to the UK. The British government has achieved, at an excessive cost, more control of declining inflows from EU countries, but it has lost access to useful EU instruments to control rising inflows from third countries. As the UK has played a leading role in developing the EU instruments to control third country immigration, one could have expected the UK to keep a close relationship with the EU. It's not just a missed opportunity, but a dangerous situation. In the next months and years, the EU and the UK will face the challenge of managing their migratory interdependence without a framework. It is an illusion to believe that frequent diplomatic contacts will suffice, or that bilateral channels can compensate for the lack of a European agreement. Unilateral deportation attempts and unwillingness to cooperate in complicated cases may escalate into a crisis. It matters now to design a comprehensive framework to manage migration flows between the EU and the UK to prevent serious international clashes. This framework may resemble the previous cooperation the UK was part of as an EU member. It may include some return of the UK in the Dublin system and new British contributions to EU missions in the Mediterranean, EU programs with third countries of origin or transit, and the Europol budget. Only by cooperating with the EU can the UK keep control of immigration. Okay, well. If you were forced to, could you give one actual positive of Brexit? Something banana shapes and something fishing, I think, were two meme points I think that used to be brought up.
Minutes after 10, and I have got a problem. It is happening. I guess it was perhaps inevitable. From the moment that Nigel Farage turned up in Dover with his Fisher-Price binoculars and started filming people coming in on small boats, people who constitute a tiny proportion of our overall immigration figures, and of whom, I think last time I checked, over 70% end up having their asylum applications approved. The narrative has been successfully, just as the narrative of European Union membership was successfully manipulated. The nation was successfully gaslit into believing lots and lots of things that weren't true. And the problem I've got is that I don't know how you deal with it. It's tempting to ignore it, isn't it? It's tempting to ignore the people who scream daily about one tiny aspect of our immigration situation and provide absolutely none of the facts that are necessary to forming an informed, evidence-based opinion. If we've learned anything in the last 10 years, it is what can happen when you have strong and pungent opinions that are not rooted in reality. That is when I think the really bad stuff happens. Do you remember? I'm haunted by the thoughts of a caller. Did we clip it up? I'm haunted by the memory of a caller from about, in my mind, it's about 3 months ago. And he said, I've got very strong opinions. And I said, oh, that's interesting. What are they based on? He said, it's not my job to base them on something. Do you remember that? I can't quite remember it. I think he speaks for a huge swathe of the population, and I don't know what to do about it. I mean, for an easy life, we could just ignore it, couldn't we? Together, you and I, plenty of other people on LBC will be wanging on about it forever. Again, possibly contributing to the problem that I'm about to describe to you rather than seeking to solve it. But do you surrender? Do you give up? Do you roll over? Do you choose the easier life? Because that way, madness lies. You ignore the facts and you leave the field free for the people who deliberately warp understanding and deliberately gaslight nations, then the really bad stuff happens. Have you seen the figures for Brexit? It's quite an apt moment, actually, to remind you of what happens when people actually get to see the rabbit, when people actually get to unwrap the box that has been placed under their Christmas tree by the likes of
James O'Brien is considered quite far left in British politics, right? Just so I have like a concept of this, right?
Boris Johnson and his mates. You actually get to see what's inside it, and support for not being in the European Union anymore plummet.
Oh, center left? Really? Okay. So he would be like an ardent supporter of like the Labour Party or something, not like further than that or whatever?
It's to, I think, about a third. And that is the problem I've got this morning. I don't know that there'll ever be an equivalent for immigration facts, immigration figures. And I know, listen, it's a really fertile ground to scream fear, to explain. Some people have even let the mask slip on occasion and revealed that they are in the business of selling fear, of scaring people regardless of the facts. But it sells newspapers. It brings in television audiences. It brings in radio audiences. Not the biggest, of course. That's us. But it does nonetheless bring in radio audiences. It delivers a frisson that you can't really deliver with the facts. How many times have I said to you that the queue for the ghost train will always be 100 times longer than the queue for the weight machine, the speak your weight machine? And it just is.
Explain the Britishisms to me. What is this? The wait for the ghost train, or the queue for the ghost train will be longer than the wait for the what?
A frisson. That's us. But it does nonetheless bring in radio audiences. It delivers a frisson that you can't really deliver with the facts. How many times have I said to you that the queue for the ghost train will always be 100 times longer than the queue for the weight machine, the speak your weight machine? And
I don't know. I have no idea what the he just said. A chilling effect? Where are my British people? What is he saying? People would rather die than work out.
Radio audiences. It delivers a frisson that you can't really deliver with the facts. How many times have I said to you that the queue for the ghost train will always be 100 times longer than the queue for the weight machine, the speak your weight machine? And it just is.
The speak your weight machine. What is the ghost train and the weight machine? Oh, weight machine. Scales? Bruh. No shot. This is the type of shit I'm talking about where they say dumb memes to with us. There is no word. You guys call scales weight machines? My God.
It just is. Some people know it. Some people cling to the knowledge that they are peddling lies because it is a very good career.
Literally
it's very
this.
lucrative. Some people are absolutely falling for an incredibly widespread propaganda campaign. And it's not born of racism every time. And there's a heck of a lot of racists up to their neck in this kind of stuff. But it's not born of racism. It's born of clicks and giggles. That gets a bigger following. That gets a bigger response. Everybody's pouring over numbers. It used to be circulation figures. Now it's going to be online activity. What's getting the biggest responses? What's getting the biggest numbers? We're an unfashionable bunch on this programme, is that we always speak our minds and shoot from the hip and hope that things prove popular. What we don't do is have a look at what's popular and then seek to emulate or repeat it. But that is a position of privilege. I've been here for a very long time. And what has drawn my attention this morning is this. I'll give you this juxtaposition of headlines in Rupert Murdoch's Times newspaper.
No, he's calling it the speak your weight machine. It's an old fairground thing. Wait. A young woman tries out a speak your weight machine on Blackpool Promenade. What the I don't know and I don't care. Never mind. You're weird. I don't care about this British shit, you guys.
Half of Britain's back ending immigration and deporting recent arrivals. That's the news story, okay? And it's true. Let's be under no illusions about that. That is true. Half of Britain's back ending immigration and deporting recent arrivals, okay? If it's a headline that you don't like and it's based upon, okay? And it's true. Let's be under no illusions about that. That is true. Half of Britain's back ending immigration and deporting recent arrivals.
Half of Britain's back ending, like moratorium, like zero, or like making dramatic changes? What's the poll? Can somebody link me the poll on that? That's crazy if that's true. Jeez.
Okay. If it's a headline that you don't like and it's based upon polling, you can, of course, say, well, no one asked me, or how can they possibly get a valid response from a sample of X thousand people? The science of polling is fairly well established. And while it's not infallible, it is largely reliable. It is the best available guide of what the public think about things. And this headline is true. Half of Britain's back ending immigration and deporting recent arrivals. But when you read into the research by YouGov, you make some discoveries that are not reflected in the top headline. I don't know if you heard yesterday's show when Sam Friedman, a former education panjandrum, explained to us how the newspapers were misleading you about private schools. You have a headline saying 50 private schools have closed since new Labour's VAT rules came in. But as you read down that article, you would have discovered, if you were relying on the facts rather than the frightening headlines, that the
Is there public support for large-scale removals of migrants? August 5th, 2025. I'm assuming this is what he's referring to since this episode here is about 6 months old. Polling on immigration typically focuses on attitudes towards the level of new arrivals, but polls rarely cover anything or another possibility of public opinion that not only do people want immigration highly curtailed, but they might also want to see large-scale removals of migrants. One person who holds such a desire is Rupert Lowe, a view which brought him into conflict with Nigel Farage during his brief stint as a Reform UK MP, given the party leader had told GB News that it is a political impossibility to deport hundreds of thousands of people. However, a new YouGov poll testing attitudes to several immigration scenarios has found that almost half of Britons say they would support admitting no more new migrants and requiring large numbers of migrants to come to the UK in recent years to leave, a figure which rises to 86% of Reform UK voters, but also encompasses sizable minorities of Labour and Lib Dem voters. Okay, gotcha. Jeez. Okay, so so the most popular one was a large decrease in the number of new migrants allowed to come to the UK, but still allowing some migrants to come. Seems to pull at around 46%? I'm sorry, 56%. Admitting no more new migrants and requiring large numbers of migrants who came to the UK in recent years to leave. That pulls at 45%. Damn. Having neutral net migration, i.e. one in, one out, is 42. Okay, damn. On the face of it, this is an extraordinary finding, coming as it does at a time when immigration is a key focus of government and public attention. However, a more detailed examination of attitudes shows a nuanced picture, suggesting that much of this apparent hostility may stem from a simple misconception. Are more migrants in the UK legally or illegally? Key to understanding this finding is the belief among the public that immigration to the UK is primarily illegal rather than legal. Our research shows that almost half of Britons think there are more migrants staying in the UK illegally rather than legally, including fully a third of the public who think the illegal figure is much higher. Damn, okay. Much higher. Damn, okay. What is the actual number? Do you think there are more immigrants staying in the UK legally or illegally? So much more staying illegally than legally is 32%. What does much more mean? Do they quantify this at all? And then somewhat more staying illegally than legally is 15%. Okay. Crucially, this view is held by 72% of those who want to see mass removals. However, these perceptions appear to be wide of the mark. Estimates of the population of illegal migrants living in the UK range from 120,000 to 1.3 million, with Reform UK's Zia Yusuf recently putting the figure at 1.2 million. Regardless of which figure from this range is chosen, it does not come close to the number of migrants living in the UK legally, with 2021-2022 census data putting the entire foreign-born population of the UK at 10.7 million. Damn, that's a huge difference in perception versus reality. Yikes. Okay. So really, every single person is wrong except for these 19% here. 22, 37, 69, about percent of people. Two-thirds of British society believe that the amount of illegal versus legal immigrants in the UK is regardless of which figure this range. Okay. Do those who say they want to see large numbers of migrants removed actually want to see those who make up the bulk of migrants to the UK made to go? If the British public dramatically overestimates the number of illegal migrants to the UK to the extent that they think that most migrants are here illegally, then the possibility arises that in reality, those who support removals don't want to see the bulk of migrants removed. To check this possibility, we tested attitudes towards specific types of migrants. Among those who want to see large-scale removals, unsurprisingly, those who want to see mass deportations almost universally want to see removals of those who came to the UK to claim benefits, small boat migrants, and those coming without work visas to work in unskilled jobs. However, these numbers fall dramatically when it comes to other groups. A much reduced 39% of deportation supporters say they want to see large-scale removals of asylum seekers who came to the UK via the correct legal process. 26% want to see workers with work visas coming to work in industries with skill shortages removed en masse, and at its lowest, 19 to 20% want to see migrants coming on work visas to work as doctors or nurses to be asked to leave. Okay. So they want to see large numbers of migrants required to leave the UK. What do they mean? Interesting. How far does the desire to reduce immigration persist when faced with economic trade-offs? Removing immigrants would not happen in a vacuum, with many foreigners working in areas that the UK currently has difficulty filling vacancies for. Relevant video. Is this a...
So that means then that we then thank the Mayor for his attendance, because the Assembly members have decided they have no questions to put to you.
Are you saying they're abdicating their duty to scrutinise me? Are you saying they haven't the guts to put questions to me? Great supine protoplasmic invertebrate jellies.
Okay, good ban. One study posed trade-offs to the public, asking them to pick between reducing illegal immigration and its potential adverse consequences, or the more economically beneficial alternative, but at the cost of higher legal migration. In each case, Britons tend to choose the economically beneficial trade-off. Okay, so this explains why the Tories failed so much with the immigration stuff, is because the British people's economy was suffering such that they would choose the migrants over the economic despair, I guess.
The number of private schools in this country has risen in total since that VAT rule was brought in by about 35, and that the number of private schools that shut every year before and after Labour's VAT changes was around 50. So you see what I mean about manipulating or misleading or even straight up lying to people, because this is the headline and it is true. I have to keep coming back to that point. Half of Britain's back-ending immigration and deporting recent arrivals. And then you read into the second bit. The research also suggests that the public is misinformed about the nature of migration to the UK, with many overestimating the proportion coming illegally. Now, I mean, even I, as someone who does this stuff for a living, albeit that I find it hard to zone in on this particular issue every single day in a way that people who are peddling perhaps the propaganda that creates this misinformation and creates this misunderstanding seem to relish. It's a simple misconception of scale. Over nearly half, 47% of respondents believe that immigration to the UK is primarily illegal rather than legal. So you've got half of the population, almost enough to win a referendum, who believe that people here illegally, and remember that is a challengeable phrase because it's only relatively recently that we've started describing refugees and asylum seekers who can only come here via irregular routes, i.e. by crossing the channel in small boats, as illegals. There is a technical defence of the use of that word, but there's no moral defence of it. It is the only way that a genuine refugee or asylum seeker can make their way to the UK. So we find ourselves in this absolutely ludicrous situation where people are being described as illegal up until the point that their asylum application has actually been processed, at which point they become entirely legal. How many people even understand that simple nuance, that simple wrinkle? So about half of the public believes immigration, illegal immigration, whatever they think that means, is much higher than legal. It's about 4%. I'm going to say that again.
Wait, say that again.
The public believes immigration, illegal immigration, whatever they think that means, is much higher than legal. It's about 4%. I'm going to say that again.
Oh, the number.
I'm not suggesting that you need to be absolutely comfortable with that figure or that it's good news. It doesn't bother me particularly, but I fully accept that if you are absolutely outraged by the prospect of people in this country who've come via irregular routes, then 4% is far too high. But how the hell does half of the country end up thinking that 4% is more than 96? So 96% of people who have arrived in this country in the year to March arrived regularly or legally. 4% arrived irregularly, or if you prefer, illegally. Listen, I don't think there's much point in me talking to you if you just want to poo-poo the numbers. That's fine, I get it. You have to carry on believing whatever it is that you want to believe, regardless of the facts and evidence. But take some comfort from the fact that newspapers, including Rupert Murdoch's Times, choose to report this under the headline, "Half of Britain's back-ending immigration and deporting recent arrivals," because that's made to make you feel better about the fact that you're being lied to. Or at least, at the very, very least, you're being hideously misled. But that headline is designed to make you feel better because there are people at the Times who have been, shall we say, complicit in the process of gaslighting an entire population. I can't believe the numbers. 4%. 4%. People have been persuaded that 4% is bigger than 96%. And of that 4%, about 86% of 4% arrived via the small boats. So it is a large percentage of a tiny fraction that have informed almost all of the discourse, both in public and in the media, about the issue of immigration that I can remember seeing since he turned up in Dover with his Fisher-Price binoculars and his determination to find something else to scare people rigid with as Brexit began to fall apart. It's extraordinary, right? And of course, he's just one man, albeit he's a man who does occasionally tell you the truth.
Anyone that thinks politics isn't about sales...
Wait, what was the name again? Hold on. Sorry, I push rewind. Sometimes YouTube likes to...
Fraction that have informed almost all of the discourse. 4%. Okay. People have been persuaded that 4% is bigger than 96%. And of that 4%, about 86% of 4% arrived via the small boats. So it is a large percentage of a tiny fraction that have informed almost all of the discourse, both in public and in the media, about the issue of immigration that I can remember seeing since he turned up in Dover with his Fisher-Price binoculars and his determination to find something else to scare people rigid with as Brexit began to fall apart.
Who is he talking about? Did I miss the name? Or was it given at the beginning of that sentence? Hold on.
Lots of times choose to report this under the headline, "Half of Britain's..." Poo-poo the numbers. That's fine. I get it. You
is this Nigel Farage? Okay.
Carry on believing whatever it is that you want to believe, regardless of the facts and evidence. But take some comfort from the fact that newspapers, including Rupert Murdoch's Times, choose to report this under the headline, "Half of Britain's back-ending immigration and deporting recent arrivals," because that's made to make you feel better about the fact that you're being lied to. Or at least, at the very, very least, you're being hideously misled. But that headline is designed to make you feel better because there are people at the Times who have been, shall we say, complicit in the process of gaslighting an entire population. I can't believe the numbers. 4%. 4%. People have been persuaded that 4% is bigger than 96%. And of that 4%, about 86% of 4% arrived via the small boats. So it is a large percentage of a tiny fraction that have informed almost all of the discourse, both in public and in the media, about the issue of immigration that I can remember seeing since he turned up in Dover with his Fisher-Price binoculars and his determination to find something else to scare people rigid with as Brexit began up in Dover with his Fisher discourse, both in public and in the media, about the issue of immigration that I can remember seeing since he turned up in Dover with his Fisher-Price binoculars and his determination to find something else to scare people rigid with as Brexit began to fall apart. It's extraordinary, right? And of course, he's just one man, albeit he's a man who does occasionally tell you the truth.
Farage there. Okay.
Anyone that thinks politics isn't about sales doesn't understand politics. It is about sales, of course it is. It's about selling ideas. It's about selling ideas, it's about selling hope, it's about sometimes selling fear. I mean, they're the things that make politics work.
Just caught himself there, didn't he? Because you could hear him swallowing the word fear. He thought, "Oh, rats, I've said it out loud." Have another listen to that and then listen for the swallow towards the end.
Anyone that thinks politics isn't about sales doesn't understand politics. It is about sales, of course it is. It's about selling ideas. It's about selling ideas, it's about selling hope, it's about sometimes selling fear. I mean, they're the things that make politics work.
No mention of facts, no mention of statistics, no mention of numbers, no mention of honesty, decency, improvement to people's lives.
One thing that drives me crazy is so much of politics today, especially listening to Konstantin. Everybody in my subreddit, all these people are like, "Oh, Konstantin's a really good debater. He's going to do crazy. You got to know all the stats." I want the stats and the figures. I'm going to destroy him. I think I could right now, though, just saying some bullshit. That's what it feels like. Because I don't think I've ever heard this guy give stats or figures, ever. Like, it's so vibe-based. It feels like I don't know what kind of check this is or how you would, oh no! Oh! Just kidding. I don't know how to explain this, right? If you get an essay question, okay, can you explain the distinct groups that came to that came to the pre-America colonies? Like, if I got this question, I have no idea. I don't know. There were multiple groups that came from England over to begin a new life in the newly settled colonies. Some came from different religious backgrounds due to fears that they faced from where they came from. Others came for economic opportunities that they felt like they could not have back in their homes. And others came for the excitement of starting a new life in a new world that would allow them to pursue things otherwise impossible. Like, this is a bullshit answer. I don't know anything. I'm not even saying anything about it. I have no idea. But I feel like 80% of politics right now is saying shit like this and everybody nodding along. This is every single Joe Rogan podcast ever. This is every single thing I've heard Konstantin say ever about anything ever. It's always the most vibed out, no numbers, no facts, no data, no coherent, actual, substantive thing. It's every single thing sounds like this. And I don't know why nobody can hear it. Nobody seems like they can hear this. This is every single answer I hear from all of the MAGA people and the reform people or whatever, and Konstantin and the centrists and Joe Rogan and everything. It's always this. It's so boring and stupid.
Lives. It's all about sales. It's all about hope. It's not, though, is it? It's all about fear. How do you frighten people? Does the truth matter? Of course it doesn't. 47% of respondents believe that there is way more illegal immigration than legal, when the real figure is 96% versus 4%. That is the mark of a failed state almost, isn't it? I saw a message this morning pointing out or describing this as a huge failure of the political class and a huge failure of the media. And it occurred to me as I read those words that it was actually a huge success. Huge swathes of the political class, including that fella. That was a clip from a documentary called Nigel Farage, The Man Who Made Brexit, which was originally broadcast on Channel 4 in 2020, although, of course, he's successfully managing to wash his hands of responsibility for that debacle now, even as, to return to some statistics, the number of people who support it has plummeted. And the media class have contributed to this almost unbelievable, what are you going to call it, a knowledge gap? I like the phrase contempt for the con men, compassion for the con. You know that I do, and I will cling to it until my dying day. I'll cling to it until my dying day. Because I watch it happen on a daily basis. I watch it happen in real time. I listen to it happen. The effort put into persuading people of things that aren't true. Just a tiny example, that private school story yesterday. And a lot of the time, the people doing it don't even know that they're doing it.
So apparently private schools and public schools are like the opposite in the UK. So like private schools are bad, shitty schools or something, and public schools are the better ones or something. I don't know. I don't know how or what that means in the UK, but whatever. But true. Alfie Witcher 5157. Destiny. They just can't stop lining up for the ghost train instead of the guessing your weight machine. True. Absolutely true. I will try to work that phrase in one time in the debate. People they'd rather wait in queue. They'd rather queue up for the ghost train than wait in line for the guess your weight machine.
It's a bit like asking a leopard to change its spots, if you like. But this is serious. We've seen what happens when we let these liars and charlatans hold the floor, hold the room. We end up leaving the biggest single market in the history of humanity and sailing solo into an uncertain and increasingly dangerous world. And it's happening again. And there is no more powerful proof than the fact that the public believe.
Why is Tiny researching UK politics? The topics listed in the website seem broad enough as to not have to focus on UK politics specifically, because I've seen Konstantin get away so many times with trying to root things back or ground things back in a UK political scene against Americans that don't know anything about UK politics, and then they get on it over and over and over again. It drives me crazy. I am highly confident that I will absolutely obliterate Konstantin on anything related to US politics. It's not even close. There's one thing that I'm going to look up so I can have a crystal clear timeline on, and it's going to be that there were good people on both sides thing, but he always roots it back to UK politics. I'm not worried about a US politics debate with anybody on the planet right now. And yeah.
Things that are absurdly untrue. I mean, monumentally untrue, almost unbelievably untrue. And those are the people that want to see the mass deportations, and those are the people that want to see the cessation of all immigration, and those are the people who are, if you like, the sons and daughters of Brexit, the grandsons and granddaughters of Brexit. They've moved on from wrecking the country as a consequence of one massive lie perpetrated on them by people who flee the scene of the crime before the flames have even died down, onto the next massive lie, which is here, which we are now seeing the evidence of.
This feels like, this feels like the line that I'm starting to see more, is that you have these people that the UKIPers lied, and then the Brexit Party lied, and now you have a new Reform Party coming up, and every time you had 14 years of Tory rule that saw massive increases in economic hardship and in immigration, two things that Brexit was supposed to deliver the UK from. And now the same people that led the charge on all of that also disappear. I don't like people that don't do the work on anything, right? Everybody complained about the bad deals with Brexit. Well, what was your Brexit deal? What was your ideal Brexit? Like, why did you vote for this? Why did you support this without having a consistent and coherent plan ever? You don't get to just like this is a vibe position. Like, oh, we should do this big thing. Okay, well, how the do you want to do it? In the United States, thank God, in the US, we don't do referendums like that, because what the in the US, this is the type of stuff that dies in Congress, and then the American retards will complain, oh, our voice was never heard, single payer, where is it? Well, the reason why it's not heard is because nobody has a consistent, coherent idea for what single payer looks like. Yeah, maybe 51% of Americans support it, but that's not enough to destroy our entire healthcare system and wait for some new plan to pop up that nobody has, whereas I guess in the UK it was. 51% was enough to completely eject them from the European Union with no idea how they would even incorporate any basic thing. What is the border between Northern Ireland and Ireland look like? Or are we going to have any trade deals at all? Or what the does anything, what is our, Jesus.
We are seeing the evidence of what happens when people are fed an unleavened diet of misinformation and or propaganda. They end up believing things that are catastrophically untrue.
And then there's this, I see this, it's kind of funny. In the United States of America, we had something called the big lie, which is what pushed people to the Jan 6 stuff and the Trump support. The idea that there was massive voter fraud that Trump began selling ahead of time before the election even happened. And it feels like illegal immigration is like the UK's version, or these immigration talking points are like the UK's version of like the big lie to push people to voting for some unhinged, retarded shit that's based off of not even having remotely close to an understanding of the actual facts. And like, even if reform did have a sweeping victory, it feels like they'd end up in another trust situation where it's like, okay, well, we won, we're here. Well, what do you want to do? Well, we're not going to deport 20% of the NHS workforce because all of our voters are old geezers who will die. And we have a whole bunch of other jobs that we're trying to fill, and our economy's already hurting enough. We probably don't want to kick all these, so nothing is going to happen. Again, that's what it feels like. If assuming reform were to win. I know this is 3 years down the line, assuming they had an election or whatever, but I don't know. Oh, we're still journeying. Who knows? We'll see.
And it is what people believe. And it's scary, right? I mean, that's why sometimes I wonder whether we should be talking about this stuff more. The more poison is being injected into the bloodstream of a population, surely those of us in the business of providing antidotes should be working ever harder. But how do you deal with this? How do you address this? How the heck do you address the fact that a third of the population believe the number of illegal migrants entering the UK is, quotes, much higher, end quotes, than the number of legal migrants? The numbers are completely contradictory of the claims. How do you deal with it?
Is the Restore Party on your radar at all? Somebody said that the Restore Party seems even more crazy than the Reform Party, and I don't know if they're polling at all, so I don't know.
So there are two questions, okay? 0345 6060973, other numbers that you need. And don't shoot the messenger. If you're desperate to believe that this problem is much bigger than it really is, and you don't want to be comforted or informed, then that's absolutely fine, but you're listening to the wrong radio program. Loads of places you can go to have your prejudices inflamed now on a daily basis. This just isn't one of them. Because the question I've got is this, and you might think the answers to this are obvious, but they're not. How has this happened? 0345 6060973. Have we learned nothing from Brexit? Did Magna Carta die for nothing? How has this happened? How have we ended up living in a country where people haven't just got things a little bit wrong about immigration? They've got things wrong by a scale that is actually visible from space.
Like, this is so annoying. If people were wrong about things a little bit, you can still have the conversation, but damn, this is big wrong. And then how do you even have the conversation at that point, right? Because the issue is that people's feelings are valid and their actions make sense if the underlying facts are true. Like I've said this a million times, I would support a J6 insurrection if it really was the case that there was a massive party working at an unprecedented level to enact voter fraud against the American people. I think you should insurrect. Those people thought they should insurrect. They were insurrecting. That's why they all called it that until they lost. And then they tried to relabel it as a protest or a riot if it was caused by Antifa, depending on your perspective on conspiracy theory there. But when the facts are so wrong.
They think that there are more people coming irregularly than regularly, when the real ratio is 4% to 96%. How the hell has that happened? 0345 6060 973. That is question number one, and it's crucial, and we have to ask it, even if it means opening up opening up sores, festering sores of hatred and self-promotion from people who probably know that they're lying to people, but are too busy counting votes and bank balances to care. They lied about Brexit, and now they're lying about this. And then the second question, which I don't think you can answer, but we can try together, right? We can have a swing at it, even if we don't come up with any definitives. What the heck can we, stroke anyone, do about it? Well, how do you even begin to push back against such epic evidence of a gaslit nation? We are a gaslit nation. And the gaslighters are on the march, probably popping up on LBC again next week to take your calls. And what they are peddling is categorically untrue. You've got the law and order stuff while I'm on the subject of Farage. Here is a man who doesn't think that the voters of Essex should be told that their candidate has been banged up for battering a woman, but who thinks he can somehow cast himself as a paragon of law and order. It is hilarious if it was happening in another country. You'd marvel at it. You'd think that they controlled all the media, the people who are simultaneously claiming that they care about law and order while also claiming that the voters of Essex shouldn't be told that the candidate they've put up to stand has been banged up for battering an ex-girlfriend. It is insane. But it all feeds into.
What was he referencing there?
The question, what on earth can you do about it? So how has this happened? 0345 6060 973. I wonder if you've got the whatever it is you would need to tell me how you think you've ended up believing such absolute nonsense. And how on earth do you push back? 0345 6060 973. And remember, these are the people who've peddled these lies, the people who have gaslit the nation, are the same people who are praying for riots on your streets. Not their streets, don't get me wrong, they're not expecting any violence or difficulty in the corners of the country where they reside, but they're praying for violence on your streets. They're lionising and championing people who have literally called for pogroms while other members of this population were setting fire to hotels full of humans. They are praying, they are begging, they are almost salivating at the prospect of more violence. And they have gaslit this nation. How?
Reform UK MP James McMurdoch was detained as a teenager for kicking former girlfriend.
James is in Durham. James, what would you like to say?
I feel like you would need more info. Spent 21 days in a young offender institution after kicking the victim around 4 times. Oh, that sounds bad. Okay. I don't know enough about that. Like, I remember thinking for years that the Chris Brown stuff was kind of like whatever, or like not great, but I didn't realize the extent to which he beat the shit out of, was it Rihanna? Like, I thought it was just kind of like, eh. And then when I looked up more of the story, you can see like the pictures afterwards. I was like, oh, that's insane.
So this is...
Why do I...
How is...
Do I care?
The guy from Britain that we were looking at yesterday. Restore Britain's immigration policy. The lies and smears have already begun, so here's the truth. Illegal migrants, gone. All of them. Without apology. Every man, every woman, they will all be deported. We have released the most comprehensive deportation policy ever produced in Britain. 100 pages.
Why do we know Rupert Lowe? We've looked at this name before. What do we know him as? He's a Twitter guy? No, I feel like I looked up his name. Ex-Reform MP. Is that it?
Failed steps to remove every single illegal migrant living in our country. It is deportation poetry. Wow. This is step 1. These miscreants are the priority. The sex pests will be removed. The hotels will close. The flights will begin. I promise you that. Don't need to go over it. The British people know my position. Legal immigration for the foreseeable future. Far more people will leave than enter. Entire visa routes will be closed off from certain countries that are proven.
This guy hates Farage now. He's the Restore Party leader. Jesus.
To supply us with sex pests.
I wonder, I'm just so curious. Konstantin, Restore Party. Has he ever made statements on why Reform has no choice?
Why Reform has no choice?
Wait, which one? Okay, Reform is this guy. Restore is... Okay.
Over recent days, there's been much debate in British politics about the future of Nigel Farage's Reform Party, cemented by the defection of Robert Jenrick, the Conservative Shadow Secretary of State for Justice and Shadow Lord Chancellor, who was pushed by Tory leader Kemi Badenoch as he was about to jump ship. Reform is developing a reputation for moving to the centre. Jenrick followed in the footsteps of a number.
Reform is developing a reputation for moving to the center. Okay. Bro, do I have this question? 1 second. I have to ask this question. What position do you hold concerning the US, Europe, and NATO that aren't positions that Putin would encourage European leaders to adopt? This guy, I feel like Like, if you were Russia, what talking point would you want to give that this guy doesn't already do? What would you change? I feel like this guy is, every single thing he has to say is to destroy the United Kingdom. My God. But okay. Or NATO or the West or whatever.
As he was about to jump ship, Reform is developing a reputation for moving to the centre. Jenrick followed in the footsteps of a number of senior or formerly senior conservatives, including Nadeem Zahawi, Nadine Dorries, Jake Berry, and others. As a curious aside, the last time I saw Jake Berry was on Question Time, when he challenged me on my criticism of net zero to explain that net zero is the solution, not the problem. We have to let go some of our obsessions like net zero and so on, and we will find out if the government's prepared to do that.
Okay. Man in the glasses.
Just to pick up on what Konstantin said, you are so wrong. We do not deliver a growing northern economy by turning our back on net zero. The north of England, this county, this region, is a global leader in green technology. We deliver a better levelled up north of England by having green-collar, highly paid, secure jobs for people who live in this region. Net zero is the solution, not the problem.
I think it's good for your voters to hear that. I'm sure Conservative Party voters will be pleased. But the programme was recorded as Nadeem Zahawi was in the process of being sacked as Conservative Party chairman because he'd failed to declare that HMRC was in the middle of an investigation into his personal tax affairs when he was appointed to various ministerial positions. This anecdote alone gives you a flavour of the sort of concerns many have raised about the increasing Toryfication of Reform. Last night, it was confirmed that another MP, Andrew Rosendale, had defected to Reform, bringing the number of Reform MPs to 7, of whom more than half are now Tory defectors: Lee Anderson, Danny Kruger, Robert Jenrick, and Andrew Rosendale himself. The worry for many is that as Conservative refugees become more numerous than native Reformers within the party, the centre of gravity will shift away from Reform's radical agenda towards the very policies and personalities they so thoroughly rejected at the last election. Reform's defiant position against the failed status quo was what won them their legion of supporters. Now some feel they're cozying up to it. Personnel is policy after all, and having forced out tough-talking right-wingers like Rupert Lowe and Ben Habib, Reform appears to be going slightly vegan. It's rare for me to be accused of naive optimism, but in this instance I do not actually share these concerns for a number of reasons which we'll come to shortly. But first, and much more importantly, we have to recognise that Reform has no choice but to continue salvaging what they can from the rotting carcass of the Conservative Party. Why? Because Britain is not America. Our electoral system does not allow a charismatic leader with a small band of acolytes to storm to power in the way that President Trump did with just J.D. Vance, RFK Jr., Elon Musk, Tulsi Gabbard, and Vivek Ramaswamy at his side. To become Prime Minister, Nigel Farage has to have 650 men and women stand as candidates in constituencies across the country, and more than half of them to actually be elected. Even now, when much of the public is fed up with the status quo and Keir Starmer enjoying the lowest favourability ratings in history, having a Reform rosette pinned on you will not guarantee victory in a specific constituency, especially to an unknown, politically inexperienced candidate. Once elected, that MP will be faced with the reality that standing as an MP is almost the exact opposite of being an MP. A political campaign is about making speeches, knocking on doors, and selling yourself to the public. But once the sale is made, your constituents need you to solve their problems. Making witty comebacks on TV requires an entirely different skill set to filling potholes. And metaphorical potholes are no small matter, nor one to worry about once the election is in the bag. The only way Reform can succeed as a political project is to win the war of the next election and then win the peace by actually delivering both locally and nationally. Which brings us to the final reason why Reform has no choice. If elected, the biggest challenge they face is turning the sinking oil tanker that is Britain around. This will require an understanding of how the machinery of government works, something that can only come from experience of being in government. Many recent defectors are being described as Tory failures, and in a sense, this is fair and correct. The Tories failed. But what the public do not know is that the Tories failed despite many of their ministers being talented and brilliant people. This is not a joke, it's a tragedy. Having met a number of the people who would be at the very top of your list of incompetent, self-serving, unprincipled, slithering creatures, I can tell you the tragedy is that most of them are none of those things. Many were good, capable people trying their best within a party that had lost its way, dealing with an openly rebellious civil service and operating within the suffocating straitjacket of powerful Blairite legislation.
Oh, they're deep state.
Which curbed their ability to actually govern the country. Put simply, you need Tory failures to avoid Reform failing in the same way. This was, of course, what President Trump and his team learned from his first term in office. They spent 4 years trying to do things and being obstructed at every turn. It was only on his triumphant return to office that the Trump administration has been able to actually implement their agenda.
But not really, because they don't work with Congress. It's just all executive action, but okay.
Explains part of my lack of acute concern about this trend within Reform. This was always going to happen. Indeed, by the time of the next election, I expect the entire Tory right to have switched to Reform, with up to 60 Reform candidates being current Conservative MPs. But the other reason for my optimism is that ultimately the direction of a political party is set at the top. Nigel Farage, his immensely impressive Great Cardinal James Orr, and the rest of the leadership cadre are no wets. As long as they're in charge, Reform will remain radical in a healthy sense of the word. They're not extremists, which is a strength, not a weakness. The very online world rewards the hotness of one's takes, but electoral politics in Britain rewards a strong, clear-eyed focus on the silent majority who are tired of economic stagnation, illegal immigration, rising crime, and crumbling infrastructure. The public are angry and they are frustrated, but they aren't extremists, nor will they tolerate extremism. For every vote won by posting unworkable demands on Twitter, there are 5 to be lost in the country at large. Many activists and commentators feel that the next election is the last opportunity to turn things around. I agree. However, urgency requires more pragmatism, not less. Whether you're a centrist like me or an ardent right-winger, the recognition of this reality must force you towards realism. Reform is the only party capable of winning the next election. Purity spiraling about how they are not right-wing enough will only make the outcomes you want less likely. We're drinking at the Last Chance Saloon. Drink responsibly. If you enjoy these videos, remember they're available as articles on my Substack.
What? Somebody said they tried to do Doge. Please don't tell me this is a real thing. Doge, United Kingdom. Am I going to be able to find this? Doge Prada. Reform taking a different approach to Musk's Doge. Stop! Uh-oh. I'm in. Do I have a hacker song? The f*** is this? Okay. Keyboard smash. What's this? Okay, I don't think I have any hacker songs. Senior figure in a council savings initiative has said comparisons to its Elon Musk-led inspiration probably wasn't helpful. Reform UK launched its Department of Local Government Efficiency, DOLGE scheme, at Kent County Council in June, modeled on the billionaire's Doge advisory group to the U.S. government. Paul Chamberlain, a deputy cabinet member involved in DOLGE, said, "DOLGE is not Doge, it is a different approach." However, conservative councillor Sarah Hudson said DOLGE was a complete waste of time and money. The Doge launched during Donald Trump's second presidency to cut federal spending, and Musk initially led the controversial program, but has since left. Jesus Christ. Reform UK launched its version with the then party chairman Zia Yousaf and tech entrepreneur Nathaniel Fred, both of whom left the scheme. All right, we've got some of Farage's political history, DOLGE. Net zero is a thing we need to do. Okay, constant support for Trump despite his foreign policy. What has Konstantin said about Trump foreign policy, I guess? I don't know. What does he have to say about this? Why is it that if I search for Konstantin, nothing comes up about him at all? Like Konstantin, and then I get this thing from the Bulwark. They probably don't even mention his name. Do I need trigonometry? Okay. Ukraine statement.
I think he's been taken to the cleaners by Vladimir Putin. He appointed this, by all accounts, very well-meaning but completely clueless friend of his called Steve Witkoff to try and negotiate with people in Moscow who've been at this for 30 years. And Steve Witkoff kind of got this kind of dazzling tour of the Kremlin, and then he got lots of Putin's time. But as Donald Trump said recently, President Putin is always nice, but he never does any of the things that we agree. And it looks like Trump is finally realizing that the MAGA narrative about Ukraine, which was the stupid idea that the reason the war is not coming to an end is Zelensky, some evil, corrupt dictator, is not remotely true. Zelensky agreed to everything that the Trump administration wanted, and yet the war is ongoing for the reason that we always knew it was ongoing.
Greenland.
The man warning the West. Trump is changing the world behind the scenes.
Being invaded by the United States. There's the situation in Iran. Trump has snatched Maduro from Venezuela. There's talk of China taking back Taiwan. What the hell is going on?
Well, what you're seeing is the West becoming weaker and emboldening our enemies, and the final collapse of a shared myth that we were living in a structured world where everything is done according to the rules. That is now gone, and Trump is acting in recognition of that reality, saying we are not going to play by the fake rules anymore that no one else is playing by anyway.
Is there a risk with this strategy?
Of course. And we can talk about the reasons for it. I think it's really important.
The floor is yours.
Konstantin Kisin is one of the sharpest voices in political commentary right now.
He's here to unpack the current geopolitical landscape and what could be done to salvage the West before it's too late.
So Russia invading Ukraine was not an accident. It was a consequence of the fact that Putin felt this was the moment to test the waters. Can we now do the things we've always wanted to do? Because the West lost its focus and sense of purpose. So for example, I don't know if you know this.
Konstantin, there is so much going on in the world right now that it is incredibly confusing to somebody like me who doesn't spend a lot of time thinking about geopolitics or the bigger picture. I'm very, very heads down. As I imagine a lot of people in my audience are, we kind of get on with our lives, but every time we look up at the news, there's Trump has snatched Maduro from Venezuela, there's the war with Russia and Ukraine, there's something going on with Iran, there's mention of Greenland being invaded by the United States, there's talk of China taking back Taiwan. I wanted to speak to you today to understand your perspective on the bigger picture here. What the hell is going on?
Well, what you're seeing is the final collapse of what people described as the post-World War II order, which then became the post-Soviet collapse order. So if you think about 1945, World War II finishes and the Cold War begins. So you go from World War II to two big major players in the world competing for dominance. And that lasts until 1991 when the Soviet Union collapses, at which point you get the unipolar world in which there's only one hegemony, only one country that's really setting the terms of what's happening in the world. The West lost its focus and its sense of purpose in 1991, because we were like, well, we defeated our great rival, communism, Soviet, Russia, etc. And then we kind of didn't really know what to do, and we took our eye off the ball. And what's happening now is that entire framework that we have had since World War II is disintegrating very rapidly. This is why, in light of recent events and the Maduro situation, you hear a lot of people talk about international law. International law was, I don't know if you've ever had Yuval Noah Harari on your show?
I have, yes.
He wrote a book called Sapiens, in which he talks about the fact that almost everything that we live in, the world in which we exist, is a kind of shared myth that we have. And laws and money and all these things, they are agreements that we have between us to make things real that are not real. Money isn't real. That piece of paper has no value in your pocket, really, outside of the fact that other people have got together and agreed that it's money, right? Well, international law really was that, but even weaker than that, because if you think about what a law is something that has to be backed by not only the consent of the people who are involved, but also, ultimately, it's about the use of force, the legitimate use of force. Now, for international law, there's never been anything that could enforce that law other than the most powerful country in the world, right? So if China invades Taiwan, no one's going to do anything about it because there is no overarching authority with the military to be able to do anything about it. And so that shared fiction that we had, which we were living in a structured world in which everything is done according to the rules-based order, you might have heard that term being used, that is now gone. And Trump is acting in recognition of that reality. And he's saying, well, given that it's sort of every man for himself now, I'm going to do what's in the interest of the United States. Is it in the interest of the United States, for example, to have an openly hostile leader of a country close to the US, which is so destabilized that 7 million people have fled as refugees? Venezuela. Is it in our interest to have this person cozying up to Russia and China? Is it in our interest to allow him to have Hezbollah training camps on the island of Margarita? Is it in our interest? It's going back to the Monroe Doctrine, the idea that America does not allow foreign nations to meddle in its backyard, so to speak. And so what he's doing now is going, well, look, this is the world we live in. I'm going to do what's best for my country. And I think that's what you're seeing.
Is there a risk with this strategy?
Of course. There's a risk with every strategy. Of course there's a risk with this strategy. There was a big risk, inevitably, with this strategy. And I think, as I talked about in my book, the West becoming weaker and emboldening our enemies, which is what we have done for a long time now, is creating an environment where we are opening ourselves up to challenge from other forces. Russia invading Ukraine was not...
It's crazy how you can do a crazy action and then invent a talking point that all these losers are just on board with. Well, unless I just wasn't listening to any foreign policy talk ever. I had never in my life before... I guess like a few months ago, ever heard this concept that Venezuela represents this huge threat to the United States of America. What the that, like, I'm pretty sure the surrounding South American states had to deal way more with any refugee shit than we did. The idea that Venezuelans were uniquely flooding to the United States is just nothing I've never heard. That they represented this huge threat, this insertion point for China. I've never heard this as like some massive issue that required an actual U.S.-led intervention, or I should just say U.S. intervention, to abduct the leader of the country. It's so cringe.
An accident. It was not an accident. It was a consequence of the fact that Putin and other people in his leadership team felt this was the moment to test the waters. Can we now do the things we've always wanted to do?
And they felt they could do that under Biden, in your view?
Yes. But see, I wouldn't personalize it down to that level. I think far too many people get carried away with Republican, Democrat, left, right, Biden, Trump. It's an ongoing process that's been going on for decades. And the culmination of it was first the invasion of Ukraine, then October 7th. October 7th was not an accident either. Hamas, backed by Iran, felt that this was their moment to act because, again, is the West going to be able to respond morally, militarily, and in other ways powerfully to that? They felt that they were able to test it. The fact that China now is openly talking about taking Taiwan is, again, another symptom of this same thing. So the risk is there. And, of course, the risk as well is that the crumbling Western alliance, we can talk about the reasons for it. I think it's really important to, particularly we're recording this in Britain and in Europe more broadly. I think that's an important conversation. The Western alliance is falling apart, and that is always going to be a risk. It's a particularly big risk for Europe, I feel.
How much of this, and before we go into the details and just catch up on a few things you said there, how much of this is linked to nuclear weapons? Because I was thinking, I can't really, all of these superpowers are going for countries that aren't armed with nuclear weapons. And it somewhat feels to me that the reason why the US wouldn't get involved if China took Taiwan is because they have nukes. And the reason why the US is a little bit intimidated by Russia is because they have nukes. So is it really the world is splitting into nuclear powers and anyone with nukes can do what the fuck they want because they can basically wipe our planet Earth if they get angry?
And that has always been the case, except we've been constrained by the framework of the rules-based order. But that got taken apart. And this is where I think the West and the United States, including, needs to take responsibility because the war in Afghanistan and Iraq even more so completely undermined our moral credibility. How can you say, well, Russia isn't allowed to invade Ukraine if you go around invading countries on a whim, making up excuses and reasons to do that? So we have eroded our moral authority and we've also eroded our military strength and the potential that we have to inflict damage on people who misbehave, so to speak. So both of those things have come together.
It seems so crazy to me that in my lifetime, I'm seeing, because it's really never happened in the 33 years that I've been alive, I'm hearing a US president talk about kidnapping another president and then going in and taking the oil. And then, we might take Greenland as well. We might have that big country over there as well, even though it belongs to a NATO ally in Denmark. It feels like something has fundamentally changed.
It has.
And I'm scared of the precedents this is going to set, because do we then all just get to start taking countries we want?
Well, this is what happens when there is a shifting of the balance of power. This is why I always said maintaining the unipolar moment as it was and not allowing the West to weaken itself was a really important thing, because the moment you have a power vacuum, you always have a power struggle. Mexico is a very good example of this. If you look at what's been happening, there's been a gigantic drug war in Mexico for the last 20 years because there are different cartels vying for power. And the moment you take out the leader of one cartel or something happens, there's a bloodbath. Because this is what happens when the central authority, the central power, the current system breaks down. You inevitably end up in a much more violent, much more unstable, much more unpredictable place. And all Trump really is doing is reflecting the reality that has been already there for years, except he's reflecting it in American foreign policy. He's saying, well, look, if Russia is going to do what it wants to do and we can't stop them, and if China is going to do what they want to do and we can't stop them, well, we've got to do what we've got to do and no one's going to stop us. And that's the world you've ended up in. And by the way, just on the nuclear point, I think it's important to say, you're 100% right. And this is one of the things I've always said about not supporting Ukraine properly, which we haven't done. We have not supported them enough to be able to actually fully repel the aggression from Russia, is it would inevitably lead to lots of other...
It's crazy how he describes the United States of America as a purely reactionary nation that doesn't have the power to literally do anything. Like, we just have to respond and react to all of these, to the world climate. It's like, he doesn't give credit to Trump for with any of this stuff. So Trump has no agency. And the United States is simply a reactionary thing that has to respond and can't dictate any, like, it's so stupid.
The small countries pursuing nuclear weapons, because it is the only guarantee of security in this world. That is a huge danger for the world in terms of nuclear proliferation, because if the precedent is, like you say, the people with nuclear weapons can do what they want and they can never be attacked, and the people with no nuclear weapons are vulnerable and weak, what would be the most rational thing for you to do if you're a smaller country? That's the big danger.
Because, you were talking about a unipolar world and a multipolar world, but I wonder if it's going to be... How many nuclear powers are there? There's like 9 or 10? If the world is actually going to split into these 10 nuclear powers, and these 10 nuclear powers can basically do what they want.
Well, nuclear powers are different. I don't see Pakistan likely to be rampaging through its neighbours, not least because they're all nuclear powers themselves.
Do you think your opponents watch your stream to see what points you're going to make before debate? They never have. I doubt they ever will, so...
I think you're talking about Russia, China.
Also, I don't care. I try to find the correct argument, I'm not trying to ambush with shit.
And the US, primarily. I don't see Britain, reinvading France, so there's something obviously I'm in favour of.
If Pakistan decided to take a neighbouring country, though, nobody can really come for them because economic...
Having one nuke is not the same as having a gigantic nuclear arsenal. I think Pakistan is relatively constrained in its behaviour.
Does Pakistan have one single nuke?
Yeah, but the big superpowers are not so. By the way, retaking France was a joke. I just wanted that clear.
There's 9 nuclear powers.
Yeah.
United States, Russia, UK, France, China, India, Pakistan, North Korea, and Israel, although I don't think they admit it.
Yeah. Israel's policy on nuclear weapons is very funny. Do you know what their official position is? We don't have nuclear weapons, but if the state of Israel is at risk of being destroyed, we will definitely use them.
So how did we get here? What are the factors at play that brought us to this particular situation? You talked about the crumbling of the Western alliance and other things. What do we need to know about what happened for us to get to this state where it seems like it's every big power for themselves?
Well, partly we've already talked about it. So it's after 91 in particular, the West loses not only its sense of purpose, but it loses its sense of danger and sense of risk. So we get very comfortable. I don't know if you know this. Europe is 12% of the world's population, 25% of the world's GDP, and 60% of the world's welfare spending.
Wow.
So if you do that, that is a sign that you've got very comfortable. You've got very lazy. You have lost the ability to realize you live in a dangerous world. It's, this is a bit of a sidetrack, but it is an important addendum to this conversation. This is why European countries have pursued economic suicide that we call net zero as vigorously as we have because we have felt so safe and so comfortable. We've engaged in all this luxury obsessions to the point where, as you know, Germany destroyed its nuclear facilities, thereby making itself reliant on Russian gas, so that when Russia invaded Ukraine, the Germans opened, the first thing that they said is, we were going to support Ukraine, we're going to give them 5,000 helmets. Right. Because they were so dependent on Russian gas, because they refused to produce their own energy. This is exactly the same thing we've done in Britain. Britain has the highest industrial electricity prices in the world, in the developed world, which means we basically destroyed all our manufacturing industry, which is now produced elsewhere. We're getting to the point where we can't make our own virgin steel. Steel is kind of important if you want to have a military, etc., etc., etc. So in Europe in particular, this has happened because we've just felt so safe and so comfortable and also so rudderless that we've been able to engage in all these loony ideas because there's been no consequence.
Does Konstantin not believe in global warming? None of these people, it's not even worth bringing that point up. No, none of them do.
Well, the consequences.
Or they do, they just say it's not important, so I don't even bother with it.
Yeah.
Where does Britain and Europe sit in the sort of rankings of importance in the world and power?
It's plummeting. I mean, look at the Trump's 12-day war in Iran, destroying Iran's nuclear facilities. No one even asked the British what we thought about it anymore. And that's not because, a lot of people like to say, the Americans, they hate the British. Americans love Britain. As you know, you live in America now. You have a British accent. I'm sure people come up to you all the time and talk to you about their connections with our country.
Not the same thing at all. This is a stupid point. Americans don't decide whether or not we rope in the UK or Britain to some military operation. Trump and his cabinet does.
The shared history, all of that stuff. The problem is we have made ourselves irrelevant because everything that Trump is looking at is strength, right? Is Britain strong now in the world? No. Is Europe strong now in the world? No. And so if you're not strong, you will not be taken seriously. And unfortunately, because of what our leaders have done over successive, and it's left, right, every political party that we have that's been in power, they have overseen a decline in our status in the world, in our power in the world, in our influence in the world, to the point now where the Americans are looking at Europe and they're going, why would we be allied with people who are not useful to us? An alliance is kind of like a marriage. Both people have to bring something to the table. What do we bring to the table from an American perspective?
This is a fairly new thing, isn't it? Because I remember growing up, I'd repeatedly hear the Prime Minister of the UK talking about how he'd spoken to his US counterpart and they had made a decision. And then even with the Venezuela situation, I think Keir Starmer came out the next day and said, like, I had no idea this was happening.
Of course. But why would you consult with people who don't matter?
Why don't we matter?
We don't matter because we have nothing to bring to the table. We don't, despite the extremely high level of professionalism, our technological superiority, the courage of our soldiers and our sailors and our airmen, despite the immense military tradition Britain has, we have cut, our debt interest repayments annually are 1.5 times, heading towards being twice our defense budget. We spend more on paying off the debt, the national debt, every year than we spend on defense.
How did the UK get here?
Well, our debt to GDP is over 100%. We keep borrowing money. We talked about the disproportionate amount of welfare spending and social spending and so on. We got here by forgetting that we live in the real world and engaging in lots of luxury beliefs about what we ought to do. So we have the highest tax burden in peacetime history in this country. And we do that not because we want to have a robust military or to do other things like that. We do it so that we can continue to pay ourselves money we don't have, borrowing it from our children and our grandchildren. And this is the case across Europe, really. America also has a high level of debt, but they have a growing economy, unlike ours. Britain's GDP per capita is lower today than it was in 2006. We have, per capita, which is what matters, per person, we have less money today than we did 20 years ago. So our economy's declined. We've destroyed our...
UK, GDP per capita. These graphs that go back this far, Jesus. UK, GDP per capita. I see that piece code update. He likes to go back to 2006. Okay, so in 2007, this is the global financial crash. And then 2014, what happened that affected the UK shit in 2014? No shot. Was it like, did Euromaidan have that big of an... Oh, maybe... refugee crisis stuff, maybe? GDP per capita in current US dollars. When I want this in current pounds or whatever. GDP per capita in pounds? Does it matter if it's in USD, current USD? Maybe, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't. Okay. That was the Brexit vote in 2014. And then they actually formally Brexited, what, in like 2020? And you had your COVID stuff. What is this just an old talking point he uses? It seems like the GDP per capita is up, no? 2024 was the highest compared to 2006 or 7?
Manufacturing, we've run down our armed forces, and also, look, President Trump, I think is fair to say, is quite sensitive about what people say about him. We have a government now...
Oh my God, loser.
...that very imprudently and unwisely spent the time they were in opposition shitting on him on a daily basis. David Lammy, who's our foreign secretary, if you take some of his comments about President Trump, they were just deeply irresponsible. Whatever you think about the rights and wrongs of what he said, someone who has the potential to be this country's foreign secretary in charge of our relationship with the United States cannot be so imprudent as to make those kinds of comments. And then you're going, well, you've just been calling this guy every name under the sun, and now you want to be relevant? You want to be taken seriously? You want to be engaged with as he makes...
Doesn't Trump do the same thing, though, constantly?
Huge decisions about geopolitics. Actions have consequences. And the actions we have been taking have produced the consequences that we've got. Now, look, I am not all doom and gloom about that. If we change our strategy, and if we change our behavior, we can change the end product of that. We can do that. But that's going to require a massive readjustment.
With the current direction of travel, where does the UK end up?
We're already there. We're irrelevant. We are irrelevant. When these, like you said, Venezuela happens, no one cares about us. When Iran gets bombed, no one cares about us. All the future big decisions about geopolitics are going to be made without Britain even being considered. Because it's going to be made by the major powers, of which Britain is no longer one.
You choose to live in the UK, despite your views that the UK is a bit of a sinking ship, I guess.
Because of my views, actually.
Because of your views?
Yeah, look, you've moved to the United States, which I'm grateful for because it's made us the biggest UK podcast in our space. I appreciate that. But as you can imagine, we get offers to do the same in all sorts of different ways, and we could have done the same. I love this country. I'm very grateful to, and I feel to stay and fight for it and to articulate my views and try and persuade people to my point of view so that we can have a British renaissance, so that we can have a British recovery is my duty for as long as I can do that. And if at some point, I feel it's completely futile, which I do not.
So you're hopeful?
I'm not despondent to the point of giving up, is where I am.
Are you hopeful?
No. But I'm also not at the point where I feel it's futile. I think there is an opportunity to turn things around if everything comes together, and we're very fortunate. And that's what I'm hopefully trying to contribute to.
Through history, when companies pursue the strategy that the UK is currently pursuing, where does it end up economically?
Well, Stephen, you're the business guy. You tell.
He was also talking about taking Greenland, which is the first time I heard him say that, I thought he was joking. Yeah. I thought this is just a funny Trump. When he was talking about taking Canada,
yeah,
he was calling it the great state of Canada. I thought this was him just joking.
Yeah.
But in more recent times, in the last week, I heard him say in an interview, "We're going to do it the easy way or the hard way," or words to that effect. What's going on?
Well, we talked about it. They're trying to protect their sphere of influence in North America and South America, and they want to have the military bases there that they want to have there. They want to have the resources and access to that.
Are we returning to empires?
We never left empire. This is the great thing that we've been living in the dream world. We've been pretending these things haven't been going on the entire time. They have. The world's always been like this. There was a brief moment after World War II when it wasn't like this, because we were fighting the Soviet Union. And the Soviet Union, the battle in the Cold War was very similar. There was proxy wars all over the place between those two great powers, right? Now, there's two different great powers and a third smaller power in Russia. And India is rising as well, who are all trying to make their moves. And all Trump is doing is saying, well, we are not going to play by the fake rules anymore that no one else is playing by anyway.
And so is Trump endeavouring to take that part of the world, take control of that?
Take control, yeah. In many ways, it's what every great power seeks to do, is to control its neighbours so that they don't have foreign influence in their backyard, so that they have the strategic advantage in their area.
Realisms.
It's the way of the world.
I mean, I didn't hear this rhetoric for the other 30 years of my life.
Yeah.
As explicitly.
Yeah.
And when you say multipolar, what are the poles?
Well, it's the US and China.
Yeah.
Russia,
are the
kind
two.
of.
Russia wants to claim it's a third one.
And
then
India's
you will
coming.
see the rise of India, I think, over time as well.
Oh, boy.
India's a lot more sensible about these things, about the way that they're developing.
And is the multipolar world a good
In what
thing or a
way?
bad thing, or is it just indifferent?
For whom?
For, let's do people living in Europe.
I think it's likely to be a very bad thing for people living in Europe. Because we become less powerful, less wealthy, less relevant, for the reasons we've already discussed. We could change it if we wanted to.
How?
We could abandon our suicidal economic policy. So we could have economic growth again, which would increase our share of GDP. We would make our people more prosperous. It
Wouldn't that just add another pole? What?
would help to quell domestic unease, part of which has been created by mass immigration. People care about that more because they're poorer, right? If we were growing, then everybody's a little bit happier. It's like you move to LA, the sunshine is nice, everybody's a little bit happier. When you're getting richer, everybody's a little bit happier. So that's one of them. The second one is you've got to recognize that the huge waves of immigration we have had have brought some positives. They've also brought a tremendous amount of cultural instability. People feel like their country is changing. They never voted for it. In fact, they repeatedly voted against it. So you have to arrest the sense that our country is ceasing to be one place and instead we're becoming different communities, right? The this community, the that community. Instead, we've got to go to a place where we're all British or we're all American or we're all French or whatever it is. We've got to integrate fully the people who have already arrived. And to do that, you have to make sure you don't continue to have the same scale of inflows that we've had. You have to deal with illegal immigration. You have to stop that from happening because that really affects how people feel about sense of fairness and a commitment and loyalty to their country. One of the reasons, if you talk to young people, they'll say they're disillusioned, they won't fight for their country, etc., is they feel like, well, their country doesn't care about them. It's bringing in people that it's paying to have a house and so all the rest of it while they can't get on the property ladder. So you've got to deal with immigration as a whole package. Then you have to rebuild your military. You have to rebuild your military capacity. And then you have to understand the new world in which we live and really pick a team and say, which alliances are we going to nurture? In my opinion, the best thing Britain could do is to nurture the alliance with the United States, to make itself relevant within that alliance in the ways that I've already talked about, and then join forces with the US and recognize that we have very similar interests in a lot of things. And if we were prepared to act like it, then we'd be in a much better place.
Why would in a great power world, why the would the United States give a about the United Kingdom? If we've decided to abandon all of Europe, why the would we care about the UK? Is there something that I'm not understanding? Is there something that I don't get or that I'm missing? Like,
and also, you've got to have more kids. A lot more kids.
Why?
If you look at, forget about the moral kind of sensibilities and politically correct stuff about it. The more people you have, the more powerful you are. Compared to all other things being equal, right? A country with more people is more powerful than a country with fewer people, just if everything else is the same. But more importantly, we're in a demographic death spiral. And this is one of the reasons we have had mass immigration. Politicians won't tell you the honest truth of it, but the real reason is they can bring in...
Great powers desire allies. Yeah, but not to be mean, but like the UK is not and will never be again like a great power, no? Like, I don't know, maybe.
Hundreds of thousands of people is, if they don't, we will see the reality, which is that we're getting poorer all the time. But if they bring in a mass of people from outside, they can say that the economy is growing. Not because it's growing on a per capita basis, but because you've simply added more people to the population. And if this seems abstract, think about it like this. Let's say you have a family, you, your girlfriend, and you've got 2 kids, right? And your total household income is £100,000 a year, let's say, for the 4 of you. Now, let's say you bring in your in-laws, they live in the same house, right?
You are retarded. Allies don't have to be great powers. They need to be strategically important. Oh, you mean like all of Europe is right now or was to the United States of America? What do you mean, you retard? Of course I understand that. But if the United States abandons every single country on the planet, why the would they look to just the United Kingdom as their sole ally? Like, alliances are so important now, so we need... a better source of chicken tikka marsala? What the do you think we would look to the UK for? I don't know.
Right, they don't earn anything. Let's say they own 10 grand a year each. So now your household income is 120,000. So you've got richer, haven't you? No, you've now got 6 people to spread that money over, and now you're per person a lot poorer. That's what British and European leaders have done, so that they could pretend that we're not getting poorer all the time. That's why they've done it. This is what they say. We need people to come and do the jobs. That's what they mean. They mean we need to bring in more people so we can tell you the economy has grown by 0.3%. While you've been getting poorer. So you've got to address the economic side of this as well, of the demographic thing. And the third thing, actually, is societies with lots of kids are just much more dynamic than societies without them. You know, you get very stale when you've got too many older people. You need that young energy, that young blood. You need young people, you need children around. And then they will, of course, be the next generation that drive things forward. So, you know, we've got to have loads more kids.
New Year always has a strange energy to it because people start talking about their goals, fresh starts, and new habits. But the
He probably hates this guy, right?
I don't think he's doing a good job for the reasons that I told you. We've got the highest tax burden in peacetime history, so he's driving business through the floor. I know that you and I have never spoken about this, but I bet you could name 50 people off the top of your head who've left the UK to go to other places, who run businesses. You're nodding, right? For people listening. Yeah. Well, why is that happening?
Is it because of taxes? Or is it because there's just not much opportunity in the UK right now? Is there not much opportunity in the UK just because of taxes? I feel like being cut off from the whole European Union market probably hurts quite a bit. That'd be my guess. I need to read an article on that to see how much that's impacted things. But
who've left the UK to go to other places, who run businesses. You're nodding, right? For people listening. Yeah. Well, why is that happening? Because the business climate here is not good. Mm-hmm. The taxes here are very high. And also the quality of life here has declined.
Or why is the business climate not good? Just because of high taxes? Is that really it?
You know, I think maybe the first point you said about climate, there's a pessimism.
Yes. Why is that?
Why?
Why is that?
Why?
It's self-fulfilling.
Yes.
It's like a self-fulfilling pessimism where founders who are in my portfolio that I've invested in will come to me and say, hi, we've just sold 10% of the business for 20 million.
Yeah.
And then the next sentence will be their escape plan. Mm-hmm. And that didn't used to happen 10 years ago.
And that's because of government policy.
Really?
That's the only way that this happens, right? Because if the government, A, keeps taxing you up to your eyeballs, and B, keeps telling you that you are evil, which is what it does, right? If you're rich in Britain, you are evil. That's the algorithm we have. And we treat successful people, we immediately assume that they're privileged people. My pet theory is that this goes back to the landed gentry. The idea that in this country, if you were rich, there was a time when that was almost certainly because your dad was rich, or at least people thought that. And so this sense that if someone is successful economically, financially, it's probably because they've benefited from some sort of ill-gotten privilege. It permeates everything. In America, people don't feel that way. They go, you've been successful because you've worked really hard and you've had a great idea. I'd love to learn from you. I'd love to be more like you. In Britain, we go, you've been successful. We've got to tax you. So if the government keeps taxing you and then telling you you're a bad person while you pay the overwhelming share of the taxes in the country, it's not a great place to be. You know, if I come home tonight and my wife says, yeah, you earn all the money, but you're a dick and I don't like you and after a while, you sort of go, well, if this isn't working, I'll go somewhere where I'm wanted. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I think that's what's happening to a lot of the most driven, the most talented, the most successful, the most creative people. And so we're driving out the business, we're driving out the entrepreneurs. Then on the industrial side of it, we talked about
it'd be interesting if he ever cited like a single number for anything ever in any of these things ever, but
before. Net zero basically means that any energy-intensive business is completely unviable in Britain. And I'm sure you've seen this with AI and lots of other things. You go to where you can do your business. Then on top of that, you add regulation, particularly in Europe, which restrict your ability to do things again. So there's this, and it doesn't have to be like that. It wasn't like that in the 90s in this country, right? There was a positive go-getter business climate. And you can do that again. You just have to have a leader who is willing to do that. And Starmer is the opposite of that. And part of the reason is that they simply can't do anything about the fact that we are spending huge amounts of money keeping lots and lots of people trapped in welfare in many ways, against their interest. And actually, in some ways, I would argue, even against their
is left and he can't be re-elected because of the laws. Are you concerned that if a different type of leader arrived into power in the US, maybe someone who China and Russia thought was less likely to send the jets in at night time and bomb nuclear bunkers or snatch a president from their house, would that be a risk for the West in your view?
Massive.
So do you think...
But that's how we got here. This is why that withdrawal from Afghanistan, embarrassing as it was, is exactly how you get everything else. It's just one symptom of people thinking, we talked about October 7th, we talked about the invasion of Ukraine, right? That's what happens when they see weakness. This is what happens. I remember, it's kind of funny. It shows the cultural differences between the Russian mindset and the Western mindset, because the Jungle Book that we had in the Soviet Union is very different to the one that you guys had here. Did you see the original Jungle Book?
The Disney one?
Yeah. So have you the
context, you should probably say where you come from, because
I'm from the Soviet Union. I was born there. And
your father, you've got mother and father that are Ukrainian and Russian.
Yeah, basically, yeah. So the Soviet Jungle Book
Why doesn't he say where? The Soviet Union is a huge place. Does that mean he was in a satellite or... Wait, I just want to see that real quick. Konstantin Kisin, Wikipedia. He was born in Moscow. Thank you. Okay. Just good to know. The Soviet Union. Okay.
Very different. And there's one of the opening scenes is Akela, who is the lead wolf. He's the wolf, the leader of the wolf pack. They're on a hunt. And they're hunting, and he misses. He's supposed to grab the animal, and he misses. And suddenly the cry goes around the jungle, Akela missed. And everybody knows what that means. Everybody knows when the leader shows weakness and fails, that's the moment when everything goes to shit and there's a power struggle for his role because he's no longer top dog. It's really as simple as that.
So do you think Trump's a good thing for the West?
Trump is a good thing for America. I think what he's done by virtue of his behavior is he's exposed the weakness of Europe. And there is a cleave now happening between Europe and America. And to that extent, I think it could be a good thing for Europe if Europe gets its act together and says, actually, we've got to wake up from the nightmare that we've created for ourselves and start acting differently. If that happens, it will also be a good thing for the West. That is not what's happening right now. It's going in the exact opposite direction.
What would it take for you to leave the
UK?
Mass migration.
Well, look, everybody gets job opportunities and stuff. Goes for a year or two somewhere. That could happen in any circumstance. If you mean like for me to say I'm leaving, other people have it at a similar time. So I'm not claiming authorship of it. But there's something that I call the woke right, which is essentially an identitarian, resentment, victimhood-based movement on the right, represented by the sort of extreme characters like Nick Fuentes and Candace Owens in the United States. Their worldview is that they've been oppressed. The woke narrative was we are oppressed. Well, now they say we've been oppressed, and it's all the fault of various groups, the Jews, the whoever's. So it's a kind of there's almost, I think it's fair to say that there are elements of it that are just openly fascistic and reminiscent of the Nazis that we saw in the 1930s, ideologically speaking. And the mainstream right has utterly rejected these people, which I think is really reassuring. But there are some people who say, well, actually, no, we need to include them. And we shouldn't divide the conservative movement, which I think is a huge mistake for conservatives to make, because their movement and their reputation with normal people. Primary concern for my kids is that my wife and I do the best job we can in raising them well. And then ultimately they're going to be their own people and they're going to have to deal with the world in front of them in exactly the same way that others before have done. My grandfather, my great-grandfather, he was younger than me now when he was sent to the Eastern Front while he had a baby son at home and he never came back. Human beings have had to deal with all of this throughout history. We always have to deal with the reality of the terrible world that we face at that moment in time. They're going to have to do the same. I can't protect them from that. What I can do is set them up in the best possible way. And that's the only thing I can do as a parent. That's what I'm trying to do.
We have a closing tradition where the last guest leaves a question for the next.
Yep.
The question that's been...
Hello. Very short. But yesterday you asked me, it was yesterday, I think, never mind. You asked me that what should I ask him when we, push him stuff to push Konstantin on during the conversation. I haven't watched the whole thing. I just saw you now watching it. But was there ever anywhere when he mentioned, he talks a lot about UK not longer superpower, Europe's decay, blah, 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 every 5 seconds doomer about how irrelevant European Union is and how all the powers lost. Now it's all about Russia, China, which is hilarious, by the way, to say that Russia is more of a superpower than European Union is. But anyway, point is that he's like America, China, Russia, all that shit. And then he's like, has anyone asked him, why then in the actual, if you're so bothered by UK losing its superpower status, you are supporting the pro-Russia party, essentially, that is quite literally responsible for the thing that weakened UK the most. He said that they lost their influence in the world, that they saw the levers of influence, but why the then he would be in support of something of a reform that is quite literally responsible of them doing the Brexit thing, leaving European Union.
We'll talk. We'll probably end up talking around this, but their argument is always a stupid one, where they just say that they want every single nation to become a great power, or he thinks that the UK can break off and become like the US ally. Was what he giving it? Yeah, it's stupid. But they basically just advocate for the destruction because they're just trying to destroy Europe, right?
Yeah, exactly what I mean. It's it's retarded as fuck. Of course, not everyone can be a superpower. One of the main reasons, if you're not a retard for European Union, is because every single European small country with small population, small economy, they cannot be in competition with the United States, right?
Yeah.
But with China, but all of European Union together, now it's a completely different story. That's kind of the point of tying the whole economies together and all of that shit. Of course, there are other reasons like trade, travel, all of that shit obviously matters, right? But they ejected themselves from the orbit, and that's why they stopped matter. He's like, we don't matter. Nobody cares about what we think. They can invade Iran, abduct Venezuela, whatever. But nobody asks us. Yeah, because who cares now? What the are you now? And ironically, I love UK. No, shade to anyone. But it's just the Brexit that kicked them in the balls, and this supports it.
Yeah.
And it's just it's just retarded. Also, I don't understand why in the fuck would UK then be an ally to Trump if Trump is all about isolationism, and he's like this. Konstantin is like, Russia and China are doing whatever the they want, right? So Trump is just playing the game, he's just acting exactly the same way as like Russia or China would. And like, why shouldn't he? Like, he's the big dog, and international order doesn't exist, rules don't exist. And like, I kind of agree with a little bit that international order success for obvious reasons. We talked about it with you, but like, what's his like end game then, like that everyone asks, like a wolf, how this Russian phrase человек волк, it's like this a man to a man is a wolf. So basically everyone asks like a lone wolf, acts like a lone wolf without any like proper laws and collaborations and things like that, right? Fending for yourself, essentially, if you have power, take what you want, right? So what his end game is this then? Like, that's good? He like says that like, that's good.
Yeah.
Like, why though? Like, why would we want Trump to be like that way, or the president of the United States to be that way? That's kind of my my question. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Yeah. I think
also, I did tell you he's from Moscow, by the way.
Yeah, I forgot the city. It was funny when he said Soviet Union, but I haven't done the huge deep digging on his past yet. But there's a lot of weird shit from his and everything. So, but I don't know if I'll get into that or not.
I bet you money that he doesn't say that he's from Moscow, from Russia, because how it makes him look. So he would rather
his
say
dad was literally like the deputy, whatever bullshit of the banking system, and was accused of sending like 3 million.
Big people.
That's how it works. Yeah. But,
and. Yeah, it's just funny that he always says either vaguely when people ask where he's from, he either says, I have Russian and Ukrainian heritage without answering that he's from Moscow, or he will say Soviet Union, like broadly, which means like you could be literally anywhere, like Kazakhstan, Ukraine, Belarus, Georgia, whatever the it means completely different than being from Russia, and not just from Russia, from Moscow.
Yeah.
Like, that's a big difference as well. You can be from some Dokshik shit in Russia. That's a completely different story than being like from Moscow. Anyway, that's kind of one of the things I forgot to mention last. That like, why in the if a guy is all about making UK strong by allegedly deporting everyone and stopping migration, then why internation does he support Brexit? Did he ever say that he supported Brexit? Or
no, I think he said that he was a Remain voter, but maybe he changed his mind over time. I'm not sure, but no, yeah, I mean, I agree. They're all just like the destruction of your talking points. So that'll probably be what our conversation generally revolves around. Like, that'll be the broader conversation. Yeah.
I also think there's an intentional, in my opinion, like this doomerism about, because it's a very, how to say this, in Russia, there's like this thing that they always talk about the загнивающий Запад. To translate this shit would be like the decaying West. Or like the decay of the West. It's like incredibly common.
Yeah.
It's like
and then
the
it goes
most
back to
common
like trans
talking
stuff
point.
and gay rights, and then lack of
Typically.
dumb shit. Yeah.
But also they recently added a lot of like migration shit there, because I simply think it's popular with MAGA, to be honest.
Migration and lack of manufacturing always, those are the two.
Yeah, but like they used to exclusively speak about, like in Soviet Union times, it would be capitalism, moral decay, whatever all of that, right? And then the Soviet Union kind of, became obviously irrelevant, and then it became slightly less commie, and more so about gays, degeneracy, women, whatever the sluts, I don't know, like feminism, gays, trans, whatever, right? All of that shit, basically, right? And then it was like super prominent in 2010, 16, that era. And then now it's all of that, obviously, but it's also about, I don't know, Christianity, like some other shit. Although Russia is hilariously the true bastion of Christianity is the country with mass abortions, murder, and divorces. But whatever. Anyway, point is that they now added. I recently noticed the immigration quite a bit there as well, because they would be like, they're like allowing all those like people that destroy, which was Kisin was doing, by the way, and they started doing that. Even that he talks about the Pakistani gangs. It's such a Russian thing. Like, it was blasted like all over this part of the world, like Eastern Europe, the Pakistani rape gangs. I don't know why that exactly, but probably because that was pushing for Brexit quite a bit, that talking point.
Yep.
Because there was like a megaphone to that.
Yep.
Just funny that he does say quite a bit of a Russian, directly Russian talking points, but he just kind of like repackages them to sound like he's in favor of the West, which is interesting. He's the only guy who actually does that. He's like, what I saw, because mostly pro-Russian people are just blatantly, pro-Russian. He also kind of sort of is pro-Ukraine, sort of. Like, he doesn't speak like a typical pro-Russian person would. And he also kind of places himself as the defender of the Western values, as in, like, I migrated here, I want this, I'm grateful to this, like, country. I wanted to, like, succeed and shit like that. It's kind of weird that he does this, like, something that I think like many people don't really do. So he like kind of poses as this guy who is like super duper into the defense of the Western values, but then advocates for literally everything that will destroy European Union and UK and the Western alliances altogether. So
yeah,
kind of strange. I'm not sure how I feel about this one.
Pretty not good.
But yeah.
All right. Have fun. Be careful. Stay safe.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Be careful. Bye. Okay. He brought this up. I watched the Fascism Debate. I don't remember these talking points, and I didn't know anything about the UK. Let's see.
That is a big issue in the UK. Yes. I agree with you. The main reason...
People were like, no, why would I fight for England? Why would I fight for the UK when it seems like my government's not even fighting for me at all? And
see, the reason that a lot of them will say that, though, is it's not so much about that we're not like China in terms of building high-speed rail, although that is a big issue in the UK. Yes. I agree with you. The main reason is they feel like they've been let down by mass immigration that's eroding the values of their country. And of course, this is where I think people on the right are very blind to this issue that we already raised, which is wealth inequality and opportunity.
I'm sure there are some people who feel that way, of course, but...
well, think about this for a second. Hold on, let me just finish the point. Like, stereotypically speaking, is it left of center people or right of center people that are going to go and fight for their country? Typically, it's going to be right of center people because of the mindset that they have, right?
I think when push comes to shove, everybody fights for their country because that's why you have to have a draft.
In a war, but what we're talking about in this situation is, will you go and serve in armed forces? That is going to be a more right-leaning perspective. And those people, we probably fair to say know the UK pretty well. Those people are concerned about the national identity of their country. It's like, why would I fight for a country that doesn't feel like my country is the issue for them?
This is where the big point of division comes for someone like myself. You're Venezuelan originally, like your family came from Venezuela, your family came from the USSR. You guys are the most British people I've ever encountered.
I have a very British face, you're correct.
Yeah, exactly. You're British to the bone.
Yeah.
And yet your families also came from countries that were somewhat far away from
Why did somebody link me this timestamp again? Who linked me this timestamp? Why?
England, right?
Yeah.
And I'm Turkish. I grew up in Turkey. My whole family lives in Turkey still, with some exceptions. And I would say I'm pretty assimilated to America. I grew up in Turkey, countries that were to the bone.
Yeah.
And yet your families also came from countries that were somewhat far away from England, right?
Yeah.
And I'm Turkish. I grew up in Turkey. My whole family lives in Turkey still, with some exceptions. And I would say I'm pretty assimilated to American culture. I grew up being fascinated by American culture. I grew up consuming American pop culture, as do many people all around the world. And what I always find interesting is when people focus on the newcomers to say that this is actually destroying the social fabric or social cohesion, not realizing that there are a ton of polls conducted on this stuff. I can just speak for America, especially, where by the second generation, assimilation is almost complete. And by the third one, it's like virtually impossible to distinguish in terms of performance, educational output, and job performance in general. It's just like everyone becomes American.
That's not true in the UK, though, unfortunately. So if you look at, for example, Islamist radicalization, second and third generation Muslims are much more radical than first generation.
Yeah.
So we're not, that's the issue that a lot of people in Britain are concerned about, is not everyone's assimilating the way that the three of us have done.
So here's the interesting point about that. Well, two things I want to address. First, like I said, people assimilate. And they become a part of the normal forces of society. They become a part of the culture, or they bring some aspect of their culture into British culture. They change the cuisine, and people seemingly enjoy it, even if they also simultaneously go attend an EDL rally and then get a little quick curry afterwards, or a little kebab on the side. But beyond that, the reason why people are angry is always going to be because the trains are not running on time, because the NHS is improperly managed due to underfunding. That's what I believe. It's always the issue of underfunding, where they're not getting the same services that they once used to, and also things are becoming more and more costly. So in that anger, it's much easier for them to be guided by right-wing forces to turn around and say, you're angry, and you're right to be angry. And the reason why all these things are happening is because we're importing all these random strangers into the country who don't speak their language, who work scared by, and that I think causes division, and causes friction that makes it harder for people to integrate. And that is part of the reason why I think, especially in places like the UK, you see a little bit more of this resilience towards full-blown integration in society.
I also think as well, for being honest, it's also because we had such huge amounts of immigration coming into the country that people understandably go, this pace of change is too much. And you have to think, it's like 2016 was the Brexit referendum. The Brexit was about many things, but really it was about people wanting immigration to be lowered. And that was now 10 years ago. Immigration hasn't been lowered. In fact, it's been ratcheted up. So people voted to lower immigration, and I'm, for instance, I voted to remain. People voted Brexit. I'm like, well, let's democracy, we get on, we're going to make the best of it. I do believe that when you ignore people's wishes at the ballot box, so people explicitly vote for something and you ignore them for the best part of the decade, that does generate a lot of anger, understandably so.
Yeah, I think in that same time frame, if there was enough appetite by the government to address the financial harm that people were experiencing, the economic struggles that people were experiencing, there would still be a lot of people who say, I don't want a brown person.
point. My concern is as well, and it's the rhetoric that is getting ratcheted up on both sides, both on the right, but both on the left. So, for instance, I'll give you an example. My own country, Yazara Sultana, who's a very prominent left-wing politician. She said the words, we need to fight the fascists in Parliament, right, okay, and then we need to fight them in ballot box, and we need to fight them in the streets. Now, the problem is, if you ask most people what fascism is, I don't think they would be able to give you a clear, coherent explanation or an analysis of the
well, let's be honest, by fascist, she means people like Reform, who are not fascists. They are a centre-right party, they're not fascists.
So,
I don't know if I agree with that.
Right, but
hold on a second. You think the Reform Party is
I think the Reform Party, as it stands currently, is a nascent fascist parliamentary group that hasn't reached its full potential.
Could you define
in the same way that
fascism in this instance?
In the same way that I would say the modern Republican Party is, or was, throughout most of its history, a liberal party, a far-right, but liberal party nonetheless, and it is becoming an illiberal or post-liberal party that is moving in the direction of fascism. Fascism is what's the best definition for it? Paleogenetic ultranationalism, a in-group, out-group dynamic that is constantly seeking to destroy the out-group and dominate the out-group, even if the out-group is actually a part of civilized society, and surrounding itself with this like mythologized understanding of this national or ethnic or religious mythology of the higher group.
But it would also include authoritarianism, the end of the one-party state, like all of
Not
these.
always, but yeah, usually, yes.
So by which of those standards would you say Reform is a fascist or neo? I can't remember how you said a nascent fascist party.
Well, the reason why I said that is because, I mean, Mussolini's fascist party was not a party Mussolini's fascist party was an active fascist party within the parliament before it became the centralized form of governance.
But they said we are fascist, right?
No, that was because the word fascism was just being invented at that point, and therefore it was still packaged as like a revolutionary, new, illiberal way.
Okay,
they didn't come in power. We now live in the post-World War II universe where like you can't say that you're fascist.
So you think that if Nigel Farage, which is currently leading the polls, you think that if he's elected, eventually he will suspend democracy, he will start pogroms against Muslims, using the state, he will have a one-party state. You think that's where this is heading?
Bear in mind that the chairman of the Reform Party is a Muslim.
Yeah, still doesn't matter. I mean, there was Jews that were in the Nazi government command structure as well. It's just like there are always going to be people that come from they come from the background of the targeted out group in general, and it doesn't even end with Muslims. Is what I mean. It's going to it always has to excise what it considers aberrations. And there's always like with Nazi Germany, for example, the next stage if they hadn't failed so dramatically in its endless militarism would most likely been to create the Übermensch structure, like start going after people who were brown haired and didn't have blue eyes. Like there's an endless expansion of that sort.
And you think that's what Reform will do? They'll suspend democracy, they'll start a
It's super in the future if they actually get to that point, but I don't think that it is far-fetched to assume that yes, reform through a process of initially reforms. I could totally see them getting to that position. Yes, it's entirely dependent on how material conditions unwind. If it gets to a point where there's tremendous economic stability, then instead of solving those issues in the same way that the American movement, the Trump movement, is not solving these issues, they will continue to be a force of political repression.
But what's your evidence? This is the thing I don't understand.
The historical patterns that I'm looking at. The historical patterns of why fascism has been implemented in the past. And now, like I said, we live in a post-fascist world, we live in a nuclear world. The dynamic is different. Okay, so fascism will not come as a third way, as an outsider any longer. I think instead you will see far-right elements within liberal society, within the parliamentary structure, move in that direction.
My worry with this is, and this is why I'm not trying to debate bro you, I'm genuinely engaging with this. I hope you feel that, right? Yeah. The issue I have in the context of the discussion we're having about Charlie Kirk is you've got a situation where people you're calling Reform fascist. I know some people in Reform, they're not fascist. They don't believe in a one-party state. They don't want to end democracy, right? We've had Nigel Farage on our show. It's very clear he's an old school Thatcher right kind of guy, right? But you're saying he's a fascist. And my worry is,
I think we'll get there.
Okay, you're saying he will get to fascism. Fair.
If material conditions.
I don't know how Thatcher used to be. Would Nigel Farage? I don't know what Nigel Farage's like economic positions are or anything though. I feel like everything I've heard him talk about has basically just been like immigration-related stuff.
Get to a point where there's mass instability in an effort to
restore. The right will become fascist. Yes,
right? Not similar to the AFD, the Nationalist France.
Reform is very different from the AFD. It doesn't matter. My point is this: if I thought the fascists were coming, I would feel it's my duty to participate in armed resistance against that. And my worry is part of where the political violence is coming from is people like you who are using this term, in my opinion, far too loosely and projecting historical analogies onto people that you're not that familiar with actually. And then you're really putting the target on their back. And my worry is the reason Charlie Kirk was killed is there were far too many people calling him a fascist, which he wasn't, right? And that's my concern with all of this irresponsible language, which I think it is.
So what's interesting about the utilization of language here is the fact that you can't really point to a single Democratic Party politician that has celebrated Charlie Kirk's death, but you can actually, in many instances, point to Republican politicians that have made a mockery of the Democratic
The
reason why I'm saying that is because like there are always going to be people on the right and on the left that engage in this kind of commentary as a reflection of how much discontent they experience. But ultimately,
you are calling Reform fascist.
No. That's a totally. First of all, my analysis on the like calling someone a fascist if they're exhibiting fascist historic fascist tendencies is perfectly valid. The consideration that this actually is like turning up the temperature as opposed to like directly calling for violence against a nascent fascist party as opposed to trying to deal with it through the existing means within the democratic structure is ridiculous. There's no comparison here. Fascist movements when they were initially forming, albeit in a much more violent time, engaged in street protests and counter protests against it. Like I'm in favor of always exhausting all available options within the confines of liberal democracy. And I think what the problem is that a lot of people point to the endpoint of fascism and what they know is the endpoint of fascism and say, well, they have to be dealt with militarily and the time for that is now. I'm saying the time for that is not here, and I hope that it never gets there, so that we can successfully resist against growing fascist movements that are born out of initially distractions or red herrings that put the crosshairs on some of the more vulnerable populations and try to deal with it within the existing confines of liberal democracy, and then try to get our politicians to address some of these material problems so that we don't have to exhibit the instability and even potentially a fascist form of government.
Farage is basically a Thatcherite. Yeah, I see a couple people saying that, but like it feels like Thatcher was like a standard. I'm vibing this out so much. I don't know anything about Thatcher. Okay, I'm just vibing on her. It sounds like they were like a standard, like neocon, liberal type person. So like open trade, like liberalization of trade and stuff, like healthy environment for corporations, relatively openish immigration, some kind of integration with like a Western liberal world order, like kind of like these kind of standard things. Whereas it feels like Farage is just a bog standard populist. But maybe Thatcher wasn't like that at all. I don't know. I don't know what it's all about.
Out of that instability, that then at that point will be resisting against militarily for sabotage or for direct acts of war.
The issue I have with your argument, Hassan, is this: is you're saying they're exhibiting on the way to fascism. You can make that argument about Keir Starmer and go, we're on the way to communism. But you laugh at the people on the right who say that.
Right? Do you feel like they're also
but that's not my point. We don't have the same issues with communism, but I think if you switch right people as communists in this country, I think you're putting crosses on people. I really do, because there are people.
You call terrorists every day.
And I putting crosses on you, and I absolutely vehemently would say that is unacceptable. But my point is, when you use that language of fascism or communist, these are labels that have a very, very real emotional trigger to people, understandably so. And what you have in this country is, unfortunately, there is a decent swathe of the population who have mental illnesses, plus access to guns, and what inevitably happens is it leads to a Charlie Kirk situation, or it leads to something on the left like you, God forbid happening.
Don't worry.
No, but I do worry, because it's a sign that society is in crisis. crisis. And I think that it's our responsibility, both people on this side, both people on your side, that we ratchet it down.
I think that if we're talking about increasing the tension, people in positions of power have a lot more responsibility than random citizens that are, in many cases, reacting to that.
In all due respect, we're not random citizens. We've both successfully both got you.
But no, I was talking like the broader left you're talking about this, like Charlie Kirk or whatever. But beyond that, in terms of applying analysis to the actions of any person, Charlie Kirk or Nick Fuentes or whoever, and say that these are people who are implementing a lot of bigoted tendencies, a lot of racist opinions, and moving the American political direction towards fascist governance. I don't think that saying that you should be able to say that because you're invoking violence and you're political violence. I don't mind if people want to it's not true, and it certainly makes a lot of people very angry. They want to talk to me all the time about killing me from my house and murdering my family. But it is unfortunately part of the political discourse.
I'm gonna dig into Tommy Robinson stuff. Tommy Robinson is just like a white identitarian dude, right? Like, I don't know if this is even worth getting into. Like, he was trying to say that, like, I think one of the quotes is like, statements by Obama and Hillary Clinton were further right than Tommy Robinson or something like that. It was really stupid. So this Rwanda plan is not things that nobody talks about this anymore, right? Plan UK was an immigration policy proposed by the governments of Johnson, Truss, and Sunak, or by people whom the UK identified as illegal immigrants or asylum seekers would have been relocated to Rwanda for processing, asylum, and resettlement. Those who were successful. Did this ever get implemented in any meaningful way, or it was signed for a duration of 5 years by British Home Secretary Priti Patel and Rwandan Foreign Minister Vincent Biruta repaid them. Other than that, it lasted for like a week. Okay. It was ruled illegal, and Rwanda refused to refund what we paid. Is that true? That's pretty funny if that's true.